with me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to this command post episode that features a reaction to the 2023 NFL draft of the Washington Commanders. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I wanted to kind of gauge the pulse of how you guys felt, not necessarily looking to break down each prospect. You guys will have that on your desk tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So be on the lookout for that, where I'll break down each and every single one of these prospects, give you my raw, honest opinion about each pick and the player and what I think we're going to ultimately be getting. Overall, this draft went pretty much the way that I thought, with a few exceptions. Obviously, I was adamant that we were going to select a quarterback, or at least that we should select a quarterback. They did not take a quarterback in this draft. And I told you this was one of the more talented and deeper draft classes at quarterback that I had ever seen. And the league spoke loud and clear. 14 quarterbacks were selected in the 2023 NFL draft. And unfortunately, Washington did not grab one of them. So I was slightly disappointed about that. I'm not happy that they think Jake Fromm is okay to be even on the roster as a third quarterback. That's not acceptable. So a little disappointed in the fact that they are okay with Jake Fromm being on the roster. That's not okay to me. And not with the draft class that featured all the quarterbacks that were available, that we could have just snagged one and you know, at least cultivated some competition for that third and final spot on the roster. Don't just hand it over to Jake Fromm. He stinks. But they did what they did. They made a decision. I thought they could go receiver, but I knew that wasn't a guarantee. So my breakdown, I had told you guys, was going to be 2 offensive linemen. They took 2 offensive linemen. I told you that I wasn't sure they were going to select a tackle. Braden Daniels is a guy that, and you're going to hear this on because the breakdown for the entire draft is already in the oven. So it's pretty much done. And again, you'll get it tomorrow morning, but you'll hear me talk about him. And I've spoken about him a number of times already. And I even alluded to him being a guy that they may be interested in towards the end of day number 2, looking out for him potentially in the 3rd round, and then, you know, going into day 3. So it helps. They held serve with the guys that they met with on these top 30 visits. Brandon Daniels was another one that they visited with. We talked about him and they selected him. So 2 offensive linemen, 2 defensive backs. What did I tell y'all about linebacker? You guys didn't want to hear this, but I made it abundantly clear. I said, I know that you want a linebacker, but I think I know this group. I think I've got a handle on this group and how they think. And because I feel like I have a handle on them, listening to them speak and their mannerisms and the action that usually follows what they say, I told you I thought for the 2nd year in a row they weren't going to take a linebacker. And for the 2nd year in a row, they did not take a linebacker. I'm not surprised, because I also told you they weren't going to take a tight end. A lot of you were hell-bent on grabbing a tight end at some point in this draft. And I said, I don't think it's coming. They really like this tight end group. Well, this was a tight end group that was as talented as I've seen. I think 2018 was pretty talented, but this group may surpass that group. Daniel Jeremiah, as I've said before, said this was the most talented group of tight ends he's seen in over a decade, and we did not take one. Again, somewhat frustrating for some of you, not for me, because they believe in some of these young guys and they want to give them an opportunity, and I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to seeing what more we can get out of Cole Turner, a guy that they spent a 5th round pick on last year. I'm not opposed to seeing what more they can get out of what's my guy's name? I can't remember his name. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but the athletic tight end that we went undrafted, former quarterback. You guys know who I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure you'll put it in the comment section. But Amani Rogers, that's his name. Amani Rogers. I'm looking forward to seeing more from a guy like Amani Rogers. And I don't know exactly what to expect out of the big Arizona State kid that they have as well, that they really like. But they really, really were high on him last year until he got injured. So I'm not opposed to seeing what those guys have. And I didn't think they would cut Logan Thomas. He's a big leader on this team, and they still think that there's good football left in him. And I do too. He's not an elite athlete. That's what we want. We're clamoring over here for something elite, right? So that's not Logan Thomas, but that doesn't mean he's not a good football player. So I knew they weren't going to do anything at tight end. So that could be frustrating for some of you. I already had my mind set on the fact that they weren't going to get a tight end, so I wasn't really that distraught about that. I was more upset about not grabbing a quarterback because I set my mind to, hey, you can't be satisfied with Jake Fromm. But I told you they were going to take a running back. I was not right about the type of running back they were looking for. I think the move that they just made, drafting Chris Rodriguez, who I love as a prospect, I think that signifies that they have a ton of confidence in what Antonio Gibson can be. They truly believe he can pick up the J.D. McKissic slack. We saw a little bit of it last year, but I think more importantly, Eric Bieniemy believes that pick signifies that. But I also think, and I don't want to discount this, I also think that it means that Jerick McKinnon is still in play here in Washington. I also believe that to be the case. But I don't see them keeping 4 running backs on the roster. So either Rodriguez doesn't make your team if you do that, or, they're going to keep 4 running backs. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that they keep 4. They've done it before here. I just don't know if they're going to do it again. And Rodriguez said he'll do anything. He'll play special teams. He'll do whatever it takes to make the football team. So as long as he's got that mentality, that mindset, and he keeps that going, he'll have a shot to make this football team because he's more of a backup to Brian Robinson. And also what that pick says to me is that they want to be physical because Brian Robinson's a physical runner and Chris Rodriguez is a physical runner. And so they're looking to get downhill. They're looking to put some people's dick in the dirt. And I think they're trying to formulate an identity. And that's something we haven't had here in Washington. So that's music to my ears. Again, I'm about that action, boss. I need to see it before I believe it. But I like that they are trying to establish some sort of identity. All right. Going heavy on offensive line this offseason, knowing that was an issue, attacking it early and often in free agency, attacking it in the draft and aggressively, and also adding a running back that I thought that they could add. I thought it was going to be more of a slasher, third down type of back. I kept, touting Chase Brown as the guy. They were looking for a hammer, not a nail. And so they definitely went and got one in Chris Rodriguez Jr. So I really like that pick. So, and I told you they would get a defensive end, and this was before the Shaka Toney situation. I just thought defensive end, knowing the situation with Chase, Montez, knowing the status of all of the defensive ends on the roster and no one being under contract past this year, I just felt like defensive end was something that they had to invest in. I first of all, I don't love the depth. You guys know that. I mean, FA's cool, but and James Smith-Williams is cool. Casey Tuill, yeah. I mean, look, you know how I feel about those guys. They're all right, but you can do better than that. So the KJ Henry pick, I'm really feeling it. I'm digging it. I'll talk more about that. Tomorrow on that show, you'll see how I feel about KJ Henry. I've made some comments about KJ Henry in the past. You'll see those clips on the show tomorrow as well. And so I feel good about that selection. Love that they came up and got a guy that they were targeting and saw him available, and they went ahead and got him. Martin Mayhew said that there were a lot of trade opportunities, and he wished he were a bit more aggressive. I wonder if one of those times he got caught kind of in a moment of reflection, because Mayhew is very guarded in what he says. I wonder if one of those times he wished he were a bit more aggressive were in the second round. You know, we got and look, I think they just loved Jatavis Martin. Period. I don't think they, felt like there was this massive drop off between he and Brian Branch, but Brian Branch was taking like 2-3 picks prior to Jatavis Martin, and if I'm not mistaken, whomever came up and got him, I want to say it might have been Detroit or somebody. I forget who came up and got him. They jumped in. Excuse me. They jumped in front of us, and I think New England or whomever was in front of us as well to get him. And so maybe he's talking about that situation. Maybe he's talking about all day 3 situation. There were over 40 trades. I think it ended up exceeding 50, the most in NFL history for this particular draft, as teams were wheeling and dealing, trying to get up. Because as I mentioned to you guys, this wasn't the draft that you wanted extra picks in. I told you guys that. This isn't the draft that you want 9, 10 players. You don't want to walk away with 10, 11 guys out of this particular draft class. The talent just wasn't there. So you're going to see a lot of teams with 5, 6, 7 picks. Why? Because I'm going to package up 2 picks and go get a guy and be done with it. I'm not going to sit here and spend, 3 7th round picks on players. That's not going to do me any good in the draft where we don't think there's enough talent to reach the 7th round. So you're going to see a lot of trades, teams trying to be aggressive to go up and get their guy and not really caring about giving up picks in the 6th and 7th round because, again, they didn't see the value there. They saw the value in the 4th and the 5th round. So you're going to see a lot of teams say, let me go get mine while it's there to be got. And Washington got in on that. Maybe they could have been a little bit more aggressive. Mayhew did seem a bit remorseful for not being a little bit more aggressive. But ultimately, they got KJ Henry, a guy that they sought after. And I think that was a good move. And so they did get the edge rusher. They did get the running back. I wasn't expecting them to double up on edge rusher, and I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to say too much about the prospects tonight, but I don't love the 7th rounder, Andre Jones. I'll just say that. I don't love that pick. Again, I know what they were looking to do there, but if you're going to do that, then just go all the way. Don't kind of split the difference. If you're looking for an athlete, again, you're looking for traits in the 7th round. Traits, characteristics of a dominant edge rusher. I don't think that's what Andre Jones has. Again, I could be wrong about him, but anyway, I digress. So, overall, I thought it was a solid draft by Washington. I don't have many complaints. My biggest complaint is because I didn't expect them to draft. I didn't expect them to draft a tight end, so I'm not disappointed about that. I didn't expect them to draft a linebacker, as I told you, so I'm not really disappointed about that. I was hoping they would draft a receiver to return kicks, but I'm like, I knew that there was a possibility that they wouldn't do that either. And the guy that I thought would be there, Darius Davis, the Chargers took him in the 4th round. So, I mean, the options weren't really there either. I mean, Charlie Jones went fairly early in day 3. I think he went in the 4th round as well, if not the 4th, the 5th. And I wasn't looking to, spend a pick on a return man or, a receiver in any round higher than the 6th. That's the 1st round. I would have been starting to think about that potentially, not in the 4th or 5th. So a lot of those guys came off the board. And then I think the Patriots took the last guy that I might have been willing to take a look at, DeMario, the kid out of Liberty. And he, I think, got taken in the 6th round, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe the 5th. I think it was the 6th, but it doesn't matter. They didn't go receiver at all in the draft. And that's fine. I didn't have a problem with that. I was shocked that they doubled down on edge rusher. I would have preferred them go after a quarterback, but a lot of the good quarterbacks that I was interested in, they were gone, long gone by the time they were on the board in the 7th round, which is why they doubled down on defensive end. So didn't see that quite coming. But outside of not getting a quarterback, a developmental quarterback, and again, I'm not gonna bitch and moan and complain about not getting a developmental quarterback. I mean, let's keep it a buck. It's a developmental quarterback. It's not a guy that you are looking to see the field anyway. So I'm not really tripping about that. They're cool with the quarterback situation the way it is with Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett backing him up. I don't have any issues with that now. But again, Jacoby Brissett is here for a year. I would have preferred them take a young guy, have him learn, develop this year, and be ready to be the backup quarterback behind Sam Howell next year. But clearly, they had other plans. So, with that said, I want to see how you guys feel about the draft. You're gonna know how I feel, and you'll probably get a sense from me tonight in talking to me tonight. But you'll really know tomorrow when I break the prospects down on the overall breakdown of the entire draft. 7 players, Washington selected through 7 rounds, and they traded up, went into the draft with 8 picks, ended up with 7. And I thought it was a really good draft. And I'll say this too before we get to the comment section. I thought Washington had the second best draft in the division. The Eagles absolutely crushed it, as they seem to do of recent note. Trading for DeAndre Swift was the icing on the cake. The Kelee Ringo pick doesn't move me. I'm not a Kelee Ringo fan. I don't think he's very good. He can get work, come in and get work with the rest of these boys in the division that Terry and the rest of our crew give work to. So that pick didn't move me, but the fact that they continue to add more Georgia Bulldogs, it has become a running joke. But at the end of the day, they had a strong draft yet again, and it was highlighted just like last year with another big time draft day trade. So the Eagles are out in front of the entire division again in the draft, and I think we came in second, barely eking out the Giants. I thought the Giants started the draft off strong. Their first 4 picks I thought were phenomenal. I love Eric Gray, the running back out of Oklahoma. I told you guys as much. They got him in the 5th round, I believe. But after that, they had 3 picks after that, and I don't love any of those selections at all. So again, that was kind of that's why I was excited about the Chris Rodriguez, because once you get to the 6th round of this particular draft, it was going to be slim pickings. It really wasn't going to be a lot of guys that moved the needle. So getting a guy the quality of a Chris Rodriguez in the 6th round really made me smile, because again, once you got to the 6th round of this particular draft, there wasn't much there that was going to get me excited for the most part. So, because all the good players were pretty much gone by then, if you ask me. We'll see what ultimately happens. But I liked our draft 1 through 6. I like the Giants draft 1 through 4. And so I think we eked by the Giants by virtue of that. I really didn't care for the Cowboys draft at all. And I thought that, the Cowboys kind of strike me as the smartest team in the room. Every time they do this, there usually is a gem in there, like Deron Bland last year. There's usually a gem in there that you're not, counting on. And so they took a lot of players off the beaten path, guys you never heard of. That's what the Cowboys do, So we'll see if it works out for them or not. But I didn't care for their draft all that much. So let's get to the comment section. And see what you guys have to say. If you're out there and you want to have your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive. We'll get to as many comments as we can. I'm going to try to stay on for about roughly an hour or so with you guys. Super chats come first. However, if you want to ensure that your comment get read, use the super chat function. But if you want to have your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive, and we'll get to as many of those as we can in the timing and rhythm of this particular show. So see what you guys have to say. Rob Yu, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Rob Yu writes, "What up, Lou? I like our 2nd round pick, but why not go plug and play guard at that spot as there were nickels available later?" There were a lot of nickels, to your point, in this draft, but you know how Washington is about getting players who fit a specific hold on one second. Let me you know what? I ain't gonna worry about it. I'll do it next time. You know how Washington is so hell bent on getting players that offer positional flex. And Quan Martin is one of those guys that offers positional flex. They love that he can play single high free safety. They love that he can play a half of the field. They love that he can play man in the slot. They love that he can come down, be a physical presence in the run game. They love that he can be a blitzing presence around the line of scrimmage as well. And so I think Brian Branch's lack of foot speed scared Washington away. At least that's what I was told. Scared them away a little bit. Love him as a football player. Love his attributes, him being Brian Branch. But they wanted a guy that offered a little bit more versatility, a guy that offered a little bit more speed and pop as an athlete. And they felt like they were getting all of those things and then some with Quan Martin. So I will tell you right now, you're talking about a plug and play guard. We got plenty of options at guard. This isn't last year where we were banking on a couple of 30 somethings from Carolina, right? This isn't that. This year we got a lot of young bucks, a lot of youngins that are going to be competing to see who can get that left guard spot. And when they finish juggling around the pieces that they've acquired, whether it's the 2 picks that they made in the draft, over the last 2 days, and Braden Daniels and Ricky Strongberg, or it's Andrew Wiley, or it's Nick Gates, because they could easily say, Braden Daniels, we want you to start the season off as our right tackle. They could easily say that. And then say, Andrew Wiley, we want to put you at right guard. Sam Cosmi, we're going to put you at left guard, or vice versa. Wiley, you're at left guard. Cosmi, you're at right guard. You don't know how they're going to juggle these pieces. We don't know, right? But we got a lot of options is what we've provided ourselves with. So I'm not as concerned about that. My biggest need coming into the draft was nickel corner. Okay? Nickel corner. We were so bad at it last year, it cost us. So as far as I'm concerned, they knocked that need down in day number 2 with the pick of Quan Martin, and I was very appreciative of them addressing what I deem to be the biggest need on the team, defensively, that is. So I didn't have a problem with that. And we'll see. And to your point, it would have been easy if they could have gotten a Steve Avila and gotten a plug and play left guard, and we don't even have to worry about, is this guy going to play center? Is he going to play guard? Is he going to play tackle? Is he going to play guard? What are you going to? We wouldn't have to worry about that if you just drafted a pure guard, to your point. But that wasn't what they were. That's not in their DNA. They love guys that can do multiple things, as we've talked about so many times. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Zoe Life, No Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Zoe Life, No Life writes, add on during Jag and our pick. Nothing new. Oh, I guess you're talking about from watching it on television. I'm assuming. I didn't watch. I never watched day 3 of the draft. That's the worst watch. It's almost as bad as watching the combine, which I can't stand. But again, it's part of my job description, so I do it. But personally, okay, this is bothering me. I got to do this real quick. Give me 1 second. All right, that's better. And I'll fix it the next time you see me. I can't. So I've gotten too many complaints about my mic. So I'm gonna start. I like to keep the mic out of the shot, but I'm gonna stop fighting now. You guys have complained enough. I'm going to put the mic in the shot so that you can hear me better, and not gonna fight anymore. I'm tired of fighting. Mama, I don't want to fight no more. So I'm assuming that you're referring to watching it on television and them going to commercial break before the Washington pick. That's what I'm assuming. I can't imagine that you're talking about something else, but that doesn't bother me if that's the case. Will Kavanaugh, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, "Sup, Lou? Sup, Will? We signed punt returner wide receiver Kashmir Allen. Hopefully, this ends the Dax Milne experiment." And I figured they would do that. I'm pretty sure they're going very hard and heavy after Kyle Soley. I don't know. Let me see if he got drafted. I don't think he got drafted. I told you I didn't think he would get drafted. After I watched his film, I was like, he doesn't look like a draftable prospect to me. But I thought they brought him in strictly to talk to him, to get a feel for him, because I think they anticipated that he wouldn't be drafted either. So I want to check and see real quick if Kyle Soley got drafted or not. My guess is that he didn't, and I think they're trying feverishly to get their hands on him because they knew they weren't going to draft a linebacker. So they were hoping that he went undrafted, and they were hoping that they could put their bid in and get their hands on him. And no, he didn't get drafted. And I think they're going to go after him as an undrafted free agent. And we'll see if they get him or not. But I expected them to do that. If they didn't get a receiver in the draft, I expected them to attack receiver, and I think they're going to add two guys, a big target, potentially undrafted. Remember the Bryce Ford Wheaton kid that I was talking about? I think they're going to try to add him. And I think they're going to try to add a guy. You said Kashmir Allen was added from UCLA. See if he has any returns for touchdowns. Let's see. Yeah, he got a kickoff return for a touchdown. What about punt return? I care more about punt returns than kickoffs, honestly. I'm about to go check his stats out. And I'll give that man a look-see to see if there's a chance that he could come in here and win a roster spot. But let me see what his numbers are talking about, because I'm more so concerned with him as a punt returner. And he didn't return punts at all this past year. He returned kickoffs. No punt returns in 2021. He did have a touchdown on kickoff return in 2021. No punt returns in 20, no punt returns in 19 or 18. So right now, I'm not 100% sold that he's going to come in here and cure all of our ills. But if he can field a punt, they're going to put him back there and see what he can do, because he's got a return background. But none of his return background in college, at least, maybe in high school, but in college, doesn't include punt returns. So right now, I'm not 100% sold that he's going to solve any of our issues, but we'll see. I mean, clearly they see something in him, and I'm pretty sure it's that particular reason that they think he can come in and at least compete as a return specialist. So we'll see what happens there. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Video channel writes, "I'm going to trust the process. That 2021 Washington draft is looking pretty decent. Run through the picks for the people, Lou." So let's pull up the 2021 draft class. And again, it's still early though. Still early to talk about that draft. So that draft was Jamin Davis in the first round, 19th overall. Cosme in the second round, 51st overall. Benjamin St. Juste, third round, 74th pick. De'Ami Brown, third round, 82nd pick. Fourth round, John Bates, 124th pick. Derek Forrest, 5th round, 163rd pick. Cam Cheeseman, 6th round, 225th. 7th round, William Bradley King, 240th overall. 7th round, Shaka Toney, 246. 7th round, Dax Milne, 258. And I would agree with you in that assessment. Jamin Davis he's coming along. He's getting better every single year. Cosme has not been healthy nor consistent yet, but I know it's in there. It's just a matter of them. This is the part of this positional flex shit that pisses me off, because just pick a position for Sam Cosme and let him hone in on that. If you want him to play tackle, put him at tackle, leave him at tackle. If you want him to play guard, put him at guard, leave him at guard. Stop playing musical chairs with this man, because he can't lock in and become better at his craft if you keep moving the position that he's playing. Stop yo-yoing him in and out of the lineup. Now, he hasn't done himself any favors with injuries. He can't control injuries, though. All he can do is, when he's healthy enough to play where they put him. But I need them to make a decision on Sam Cosme. We still don't even know what the hell he is. We still are talking about, are they going to put Cosme at tackle or guard? Pick a position for him and let him play there. I hope it's just put him at guard. Just put him at guard and leave him there. If that's what you're going to do that and leave him there. Benjamin St. Juste has been really good for us. Again, when healthy. He's exceeded my expectations, but he is exactly what I said he was. Still doesn't have a career interception to his name. So he's everything that I thought he was going to be in that department, but he's been really good for us. De'Ami Brown, jury's still out on De'Ami. Obviously, hasn't had a lot of opportunities, and but he's shown flashes. Obviously, the Tennessee Titans game is what we're hanging on to right now. John Bates has been extremely solid, but 4th round for John Bates, a little high for me. And I remember being so excited about John Bates, thinking, you know what? In college, you see that very often, where really athletically gifted tight ends just don't get enough opportunities. And so you're like, man, this guy's going to be a much better pro than he was a college player. That ain't the case with John Bates. I was wrong about him. He's exactly what he was at Boise State. I don't think you're going to get anything else out of him. He's a TE3 to me, and TE3s shouldn't be selected in the 4th round. But Derek Forrest, it looks like a steal right now. But again, that was 1 year. Need to see it again, okay, to confirm what my eyes saw last year. But love the production that we got of him. Love the maturation and growth we saw from him in year 2. I'd like to see that continue into year number 3. But that seems like a steal right now in the 5th round. Cam Cheeseman has been excellent as a long snapper. We've had no issues with him. He seems to be building a good rapport with all of the specialists that are here. So I love that pick for Washington. Remember, they traded up to get Cam Cheeseman in that particular draft class. William Bradley King, Shaka Toney, Dax Milne were the 3 7th rounders in the 2021 draft. And I was excited about Shaka Toney. Dax Milne was cool. William Bradley King, not so much. He really hasn't gotten an opportunity for good reason. And Shaka Toney really hasn't, emerged as a situational pass rusher, which is what I thought he would be. And Dax Milne, I think he could be a solid receiver. Unfortunately, the fan base is soured on him because he was thrusted into a role that he probably didn't anticipate being thrusted into, which was punt return duties. And because of that, the fan base is turned on him, and they don't even want to see the man as a receiver now. So I actually like Dax Milne as a receiver. I just don't want him returning punts. It's that simple. But in order to bring somebody else in here, particularly at the receiver position, it's going to have to come at someone's expense on the roster, and it's probably going to be Dax Milne. If he can't return punts, probably can't be here as a receiver either. So to your point, this draft is a really solid draft. Top to bottom, it's a really solid draft. Absolutely. I'd agree with you. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Chris writes, "Hey Lou, what's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise, as always." He says, "B for the draft. 3 issues to settle. 1, who is the starting left guard and center? And we have options, so I'm not as concerned about it. It'd be a lot more concerning if we hadn't done enough. But after free agency and the draft, I'd say we've thrown more than enough darts at the board. There should be enough to stick, where we should be able to put an offensive line of 5 guys on the field." And I said the exact same thing last year, and it did not work out well for us. But Last year, we did not put in the work. We assumed that the line was fine, and we subtracted some big time players in Eric Flowers and Brandon Sheriff, and we added 2 guys that simply were not up to the challenge. And so we got what we deserved last year. But this year, I don't see us, making that same mistake. We threw enough darts at the board now, and more than enough of them will stick, and we'll find the best 5 guys. And now we'll go from there. So 2, who is the punt returner? That's to be continued. That's definitely to be determined. And I think we won't find that out until training camp, honestly speaking. I don't think we'll have the answers to that until we get to literally the first preseason game and we see who they've got back there returning. We'll hear about it. Questions will be asked about it in training camp, and we'll hear about this guy was fielding punts and this guy was fielding punts and that guy was fielding punts in training camp. But until we see who they decide to put out there the first preseason game to get the first reps, we really, truly won't know who that guy is going to be. And what is Bieniemy's strategy to take the offense to the next level? And again, you won't know that until we get into the season. We don't even know what the offense is. We're all excited, but there's this mystery that is shrouded in what Eric Bieniemy is going to bring to this team. We just assume that it's going to look something like Kansas City, but we have no idea. It could look nothing like the Chiefs offense. It could be something totally different because he could have totally different philosophical beliefs from Andy Reid, and he could be trying to display those here in Washington. So we have no idea what we're getting ourselves into. We're just excited that it's not Scott Turner, and we think that him being with Andy Reid these last 5 years had to have rubbed off on him in some way, shape, or form, and that he's going to bring a little bit of that magic here to Washington. So we'll see what this offense looks like. I'm excited, but I'm also extremely curious because I don't know what it's going to look like. All right. Zoe Life, No Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, has your expectations changed for the defense? No. I still need to see it to believe it with the defense. I have more confidence, and I know this sounds crazy, and I'm okay with that. But I have more confidence right now in the offense than I do the defense. Now, obviously, I just told you we don't know what this offense is going to look like and what Eric Bieniemy is going to try to execute with us. We don't know how Sam Howell is going to play, and we don't know how this offensive line is going to fare. So there are a lot of variables on the offensive side of the football that could cause things to go awry. However, I'll take my chances with the amount of talent that we have on that side of the football. I'll put it up against anybody in the conference, any team in the division. I'll put up our talent against theirs. We may not win, but we're going to damn sure go down swinging, and it's not going to be an ass kicking. That's for sure. So I love the talent that we can put on the field at receiver. I think tight end is the place where, teams can get us right now. But that doesn't mean our tight end group isn't talented. We just got to show it with production. Okay. But I like the running back room. I love the receiver room. I love, some of the pieces at tight end, and I want to see them get more opportunities. So I love what we can put on the field offensively. So I've got confidence in that group. And I really think highly of Sam Howell. You guys know that. Okay. Defensively, I still don't know, outside of the 2 defensive tackles, I don't know if we get consistent pressure on the quarterback, specifically off the edge. Okay. Still haven't seen a double-digit season from either one of our edge rushers. I like the depth at defensive end more today than I did yesterday, right? Because we added a guy that I believe in KJ Henry. But I don't know if we can get consistent pressure on the quarterback. I don't think Jack's going to change his stripes all of a sudden and be uber aggressive now because we added Emmanuel Forbes. But I do love the addition of Emmanuel Forbes. I do love the addition of Quan Martin to the secondary because, again, our secondary wasn't terrible last year. A lot of people, kind of gave the secondary a bad rap. The secondary wasn't terrible. It just didn't create any turnovers. Now, our nickel wasn't great last year. That, if you want to call any part of the secondary terrible last year, it was the depth and it was the nickel position. So when we got injuries, we started to be tested, and we didn't pass the test. William Jackson III being traded, Juice going down with injury forced us to put Sip in the game. That's not supposed to happen. Okay, he was never supposed to see the field in a defensive capacity last year as a rookie, and he did. And it didn't bode well for us in that first Giants game. He got through the Falcons game because the Falcons don't throw the football. So he was able to go out there and play, get his feet wet. But then that next week, the Giants were kicking his ass with Isaiah Hodgins. Making Isaiah Hodgins look like a Pro Bowler in the first half of that game before they had to sit his ass down for Danny Johnson. So the lack of depth last year, when Cam Curl went down and we started looking around and we finger pointing and guys don't know where we're supposed to be, and the Browns have receivers running wide open in the secondary, like we lost our damn minds, that was a problem. We've addressed those issues, we hope, but I still need to see it come together. And then I don't think we upgraded the linebacker position at all. If anything, it's a lateral move bringing in Cody Barton, but I argue that we might have taken a step backwards. We'll see. I don't know about Cody Barton. They think that this guy is going to be a wonderful starting linebacker for them. Okay, we'll see. You keep telling me you got a starting linebacker in free agency. We'll see. We will see. So I still have my doubts about the defense. So nothing has changed other than I think we might be able to take the football away a little bit more in 2023. I do feel that way after seeing the improvements that they've made via the draft. But as far as consistency goes, I still need to see it to believe it. I know what I'm getting out of the Bama Wall. Love those guys to death, and I know what I'm getting out of those dudes. I just need to see what else everybody else is doing. I know what I'm getting out of Montez Sweat. I'd like to get more out of him, but I know what I'm getting out of him. Don't know what I'm going to get out of Chase Young, right? But I hope he's motivated. I hope we get the Chase Young from his rookie season, not the Chase Young from 2021. But again, all of that remains to be seen. So I've got high expectations for the defense, but I understand that it might not start well for them, and they might pick it up and gain a little bit of traction as time, passes in the season. That's what happened last year. That's what happened the year before that. We started off terrible in 2021, horrible defensively. And then as the season wore on, we got better and better. And it gave us a chance. It helped us put together a 4-game winning streak and get back to 500 on the season at 6-6 going into that Dallas game. Same thing happened last year. We started off slow. Couldn't stop Jacksonville. Jacksonville stopped themselves. Couldn't stop Detroit. That's why we lost that game. They scored 36. We couldn't stop them. Couldn't stop the Eagles in the second quarter. They scored 24 points. Right? The defense was not good early in the season. And then Cam Curl came back from the injury in week 3 against Philadelphia, and it started to kind of settle in week 4 against Dallas. That defensive performance against Dallas, minus William Jackson III and the penalty fest that he put forth, and then that half-ass effort on the CeeDee Lamb touchdown up the seam. We had 2 interceptions that were negated via penalty in that game. The defense was actually pretty good against Dallas. We just didn't make enough offensive plays. So it could be one of those situations where the defense has to settle in, but I like the pieces more so than I ever have before. I like the pieces that they have to work with. Now it's a question of what are you going to do? How are you going to use them? And Jack is excited. We hear this every year. Jack's excited about the pieces, that they've given him, that they've added. All right, well, let me see you do something with them. Max on the beat. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Max writes, I disagree, but maybe I'm biased, but I agree the Eagles are the best at number 1, but the Giants are second, and you guys did all right. For me, we did what we needed to do, and after Gray, it was about developmental depth. Well, that pulls your draft down. I don't give a shit about developmental depth. That's cool in the 6th and 7th round, and that's all you had left is 6th and 7th round picks, but it pulls down the value of your draft. I don't have anything to do with that. I'm just telling you, you drafted 7 players, And after the fourth player, none of those guys are going to have an impact on this season and maybe even next or ever. I can't say that with 100% certainty, obviously, but Washington has their first 6 players are going to impact their team probably this season in some way, shape, or form. I don't think you can say the same about the Giants. Now, we can argue about the first 4 players that the Giants took and the impact that they're going to have. Will that be greater in totality than the 6 guys that Washington took, the first 6 players that they took in the draft? We could argue that. I mean, getting Jalen Hyatt is a pretty big deal for the Giants. Getting the cornerback Deonte Banks is a pretty big deal for you in the first round. So are these guys going to impact your team in a massive way to the point where it supersedes any of the guys that we drafted in the first 6 picks? Maybe we could argue that, but I'll take 6 guys that I think have a chance to be impact players over 4. So we'll agree to disagree there on that one. But again, we're splitting hairs because I think the Giants were right there with us. As I said, I'll give us the nod slightly just because I don't love what the Giants did after Eric Gray. I love Eric Gray. But after him, I just don't love the rest of their draft. But again, they did what they could do with what they had, right? So because I didn't think there were going to be a ton of really good prospects after the 5th round in this year's draft. And you saw that. That's why there was so much movement in this particular draft of teams going up to get their guy, because everyone knew that this wasn't a particularly deep draft. And so once you get to the 6th and 7th round, wasn't going to be a ton of stuff there that was really worth salvaging at that point. So I'm glad Washington didn't get caught up like they did. We saw in 2021 when there was a deep draft. That was a COVID draft where it was so many draftable players. Last year was the same thing. There was still a carryover from COVID and a lot more draftable players. Now you're starting to weed that whole thing out, and not as many draftable players in this year's draft class. Not at least guys that you get excited about. So I think Washington is in second, but again, not by much. Commanders Nation, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. But we can agree to disagree, Max. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, "Sup, Lou? Sup, Commanders Nation? My problem with this team is they don't react to the board. Like Forbes, but Gonzalez is the better talent. Simple as that. Eagles get steals every year, and that's why they are the best in the division." So I can't disagree with you in them not reacting to the board. They keep saying that that's what they're doing, but their actions say otherwise. I firmly believe, look, there's empirical proof. There is evidence that they were fixated on Emmanuel Forbes at 16. Ron, driving into the facility the morning of the draft, said, man, if Emmanuel Forbes is on the board, it's going to be pretty hard to pass him up. He pretty much was telling us, or anybody that was listening, hey, we're drafting Emmanuel Forbes. Now, obviously, that came out after the pick. They couldn't show that before the pick was made. You don't want to tip your hand and tell people what you're going to do. But Ron, that's showing you that irregardless of what happened in front of them, irregardless of what the board said, they like to say, we're going to let the board speak to us. Well, clearly, the board was speaking a different language, or you just didn't care to hear what the board had to say. You just put the board on mute because you were already fixated on a guy. And to your point, Commanders Nation, I don't think they were ever going to be swayed away from Emmanuel Forbes at 16. And so I think they made the pick with every intention of selecting him unless somebody took him. And I told you, no one was taking Emmanuel Forbes in the first 15 picks, and they knew that. Now, we can argue about Christian Gonzalez. And I said this during the process. His lack of physicality is going to turn a lot of teams off. It's going to scare a lot of teams. And he did not have a ton of ball production prior to this season. But he did have ball production in 2022, and that's important. But Devon Witherspoon's physicality, despite being diminutive, that shows up. Football is a physical sport. And scouts, and I love listening to Eric Stokes. Did you guys catch his presser today after the draft? I love listening to Eric Stokes because he's like the quintessential football junkie scout. He's worked his way up the food chain, to be, I think he's our player, the director of player personnel. And he's worked his way up to that level, being a scout, getting it out of the mud. And when you listen to him talk, he speaks that scout talk, that scout speak. And he said, look, man, I don't try to overthink it. I'm looking for dudes who love it. I told y'all that's one of my things that I got to know. Do you love football? And he's like, I'm looking for guys who play hard, who are physical and durable. I'm athletically gifted, obviously, if you can get that as well. But I'm not trying to overthink it. That's what Eric Stokes pretty much said. And it's impossible to overlook the lack of physicality with Christian Gonzalez, because that leads to other questions like, do you love it? What are we protecting over here? Are you not willing to put it on the line for your team? Like, what are we doing here? And so if you got to ask those type of questions, if that kind of doubt exists, that's a problem for a lot of teams. I think it was a problem for a lot. I mean, look where he landed. The league spoke. So I'm not that bent out of shape, but once again, I'm going to be watching Christian Gonzalez and seeing how he develops in New England. And that'll be one of those conversations that we'll be having for the next 4 to 5 years, right? We'll be keeping an eye on a couple of players that we didn't take. Another question will be, all right, let's see what Brian Branch is doing in Detroit. Washington could have traded up a couple of spots and gotten him if they so choose. They chose to sit and wait and take a guy that I think, much like in the first round with Emmanuel Forbes, they had already circled on their board and said, hey, if he's there, we're taking him. Like, we're not worried about who's falling to us. If he's there, we're taking him. Well, and that's another guy that you'll look and say, all right, Brian Branch could have had him. Didn't go after him, wasn't aggressive enough. Let's see what he's doing in Detroit. So we'll see what happens with those, two players in particular. For me, I'll be watching. But at the end of the day, I'm not that bent out of shape about it. They made it abundantly clear they were looking for playmakers. Brian Branch wasn't a ball hawk. He wasn't a guy that took the football away. Quan Martin has been. Christian Gonzalez hasn't been a ball hawk in his career, and he's not physical. Emmanuel Forbes has been. So I understand what the thought process was. I don't have to agree with it or love it, but I understand it. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou, tough but honest question to ask you. What do you think is Rivera's legacy in Washington if the team does not make the playoffs this season? So I think he'll be fired if this team does not make the playoffs. I think he understands that. I think he's okay with his place in this franchise right now. He looked at his own mortality in Washington, and I think he made a statement that let me know he's just going to let the chips fall where they may. At this point, he feels like, look, man, I think in his mind, he's told himself, and this is how he sleeps good at night. He told himself, bro, I don't know if anybody could have did the shit I just did and still be here standing. I went through cancer. I went through this shit with the Snyders. I went through a name change. I went through being drugged through the mud with this organization, having to answer a bunch of non-football questions. I had to protect players like Brian Robinson after, one of the Snyder's attorneys threw him in a comment that was just uncalled for. I had to go to the team and talk about a lot of shit that most coaches don't have to address ever. I had to do that shit here in Washington. And I did it all the while improving the roster, improving the culture, and at least giving Washington a product that they can be proud of on and off the field. Okay. Now, it's not a winning product yet. Okay, he hasn't given us a winning season in 3 years, but we got to 500 this past year, right? So he made a comment where he said, you just want to leave a place better than the way you found it. No matter what happens, you just want to feel like you left the place better than the way you found it. And he did that. So I think in his mind, he's already made peace with this situation if this season doesn't work out, because he knows he did all he could do. And I already told y'all, I thought we got the most out of Ron already. We got what we were supposed to get out of Ron. Ron came in here. He changed the culture. He helped improve the roster. But more importantly, he made it okay for people outside of the fan base to look at this team and look at this team with a shred, an ounce of respect, and not look at them for being the laughing stock of the NFC East or this big ball of confusion and dysfunction. He made this organization tolerable. And I said we're indebted to him for that. Because if they would have thrown a young coach who had never been a head coach before into this bullshit, he would have gotten chewed up and spit out. So ultimately, his legacy, if we don't win this season, will be, for most people, a failure, obviously. But for me, I'll be like, hey, Ron, I appreciate what you did, bro. And I don't know if there's much more you can. I still don't know if there's much more Ron can do for us. We'll see. I mean, Eric Bieniemy is the key for him, obviously, because Ron has his deficiencies as a coach. Bieniemy may be able to help him, cover up some of those, right? Even every coach has their deficiencies. Bill Belichick has his deficiencies, all right? That's why having a big-time offensive coordinator has been important in every step of the way for him in winning, going all the way back to Charlie Weiss at the beginning. And then it was Josh McDaniels, right? He needs to have an offensive mind there because that's not his forte. That's why he went out and got Bill O'Brien, because he bungled that thing last year offensively. They were a mess. So everybody's got deficiencies. Ron's got his game management, the quarterback situation. He hasn't had a great quarterback situation, but he shouldn't have benched Heineke last year. And I was on board with him benching Heineke at the time. But like I said, you got to be able to understand that this had to be a quick hook. If once he threw the second pick, I was ready to bench him, after the first pick, but I was like, that's not fair. It's the first pass of the game. After that second pick, we were well enough into the game for you to be able to see he don't have it today. Get his ass out of there. And he just stuck by him. And so, sometimes his decision-making isn't the best, but at the end of the day, he rallies the troops. Guys believe in him. They believe in his message, and he's changed the culture if nothing else. So that will be his legacy for me if he doesn't win this year, is that he helped change the culture and he helped make it a better situation for the next guy that comes along. It'll be a much better roster than when he got here, and it'll be a much better situation. Obviously, ownership change is bigger than anything Ron has done, but you could have had a new owner come in here, and if the roster looked like it did when Ron got here in 2020, it wouldn't have made a difference. That next coach would have been a dead man walking. If Dontrell Inman is your starting, Z wide receiver, you're in some trouble. Okay? If Isaiah Wright is getting meaningful snaps for you at receiver, you're dead. Dead, I tell you. That was our situation in 2020. Don't forget. A lot of y'all forget. Just a short 3 years ago, we had one of the worst rosters in football. So say what you want about Ron, and there's a lot you can say. He would have left this team in a much better position, and he would have changed the culture. So let's hope he wins. I'm rooting for Ron. I know a lot of y'all want him gone. I don't. I want to see him see this thing through. I want him to win here. Mike Jink, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, Louie Lou, what's going on, Mike? Says, sup, my guy? What's going on with you, MJ? Says, that Swift pickup was tremendous for the guys. Everything looks good on paper. Now I just got to stay healthy. So I always try to make myself busy so that I don't obsess over day 3 of the draft. So normally I go to the gym. Today I just decided to sleep. Because I was supposed to go to something in the water. And I told my wife, you go ahead, you go sell my ticket, do whatever you got to do, give it away. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to grind, and I'm going to get some rest. It's been a long week. I've been burning the candle at both ends. I just didn't have it in me. So I said, you go ahead and go without me. So she went, she took all the kids. And so I've got the house to myself. So I said, I'm going to sleep. And I woke up. And the first thing that I saw on my phone was the Eagles traded for DeAndre Swift. And I said, you got to be effing kidding me. I'm not surprised. That's Howie Roseman. Howie be wheeling and dealing like Kevin Nealon. I'm not surprised. And as soon as, if you go back and watch Draft Party Day #1, as soon as the Lions selected Jahmyr Gibbs, I said, uh-oh. If you're DeAndre Swift, that probably means you're on the block, my friend. You're not safe. And sure enough, the Eagles came in, swooped in, scooped him. And the thing that it's not about what the Eagles are doing, the moves that they're making. It's about what they're giving up to get these moves done. That's the shit that makes Howie extravagant. Is I feel like Howie wins every single trade. In baseball, our GM, Alex Anthopoulos, is the best GM in baseball, if you ask me, because he doesn't lose trades. He signs all of his players before, the time comes. He gets them at great value for the team because he takes advantage of situations. He knows, hey, this dude came from a dirt poor situation. He ain't making no money right now. He's still got another 3 years on his minor league contract that we signed him to. And so, hey, if I dangle this $100 million contract in front of him, he's going to jump at the opportunity to get some money in his pocket. If he just waits another 2 or 3 years, he'll make $300 million. But if I give you 100 right now, are you going to take it, or are you going to wait 3 years while you still broke? Nah, you're going to take that 100 mil and you'll be smart enough to set it up to where you can come back to the table and eat again. But I need to eat right now. And that's what Howie Roseman is so good at, is finding situations and exploiting them. Found the situation with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year and exploited the Saints. Found this situation with a team in the Lions who were looking to move on from DeAndre Swift and exploited it. Eagles ain't give a damn about a 5th round pick this year and I think a 4th next year, or vice versa, 4th this year, 5th next year. They didn't give a shit about that. They just got an impact player at the running back position. Now, I will say this. He scares me a lot more than any of the players that you have on your roster at running back. But he's not that big of an upgrade over Miles Sanders. I'll just say that. He is an upgrade over him, but it's not that significant of a boost. But what it is it's a big boost over the guys that I thought you had on the roster currently, like Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott and all those guys. It's a significant upgrade over them. But if you would have just brought back your whole crew from last year, including Miles Sanders, I would have still felt the same way I feel about it now, which is, damn, that's a good group. And Miles Sanders, when healthy, as we saw last year, he's a problem. Feel the same way about DeAndre Swift. And he's got the same issue that Miles Sanders had up until last year, which is can't stay healthy. So we'll see. When he's healthy, he's a problem. A big, big problem. And I hated to see y'all get him, but it's really not that much different to me from Miles Sanders, honestly. So I just hate that you were able to replenish a position that I was thinking, maybe they got a little bit worse at that position. Now you didn't. You actually got better at the position. So Yeah, you guys back at it again, man. Will Kavanaugh, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy Will writes, breaking. Eagles sign UDFA UGA mascot, Georgia. Somebody on social media said that, and I couldn't help but laugh. I think it was my guy Dory Gunner that did it. I think it was. I'm not sure, but I couldn't help but chuckle. I had to retweet it because it was so funny. Because you look at the Eagles draft, and literally, I think it's all but one guy from Georgia, maybe two of them. But I mean, you look at the last two drafts, and they got Georgia Bulldogs smattered all over their roster. It's ridiculous. I mean, those dudes probably feel like they back at school again, like they back on the campus at Athens in Georgia. Like, damn, everywhere I turn is another one of my teammates. You know, N'Kobe Dean, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Keely Ringo, DeAndre Swift. I mean, shit. How many of these damn Georgia Bulldogs do you need? Feel like I'm missing one. Might be one or two more in there. So yeah, Uga might be joining the squad in a little bit too. Zoe Life, No Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, apparently Kyle Soley signed with the Cardinals. Makes sense. He went to Arizona State, right in his backyard, and they got to him first. I know Washington was interested. I think that's who they were going to try to get. I'm pretty sure they're going to sign another undrafted linebacker, and they're going to keep it pushing. That was their plan all along. I don't think they ever planned, unless a guy fell to them late in the draft. I don't think their plan was ever to select a linebacker. Similar to tight end, they weren't interested in this particular draft. They just weren't interested. Rob, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I know Kyle of Kendall Fuller gets a bad rap, which is unwarranted, but I think it would be a huge mistake if they cut him prematurely. How do they juggle the rotation? It's a great problem for them to have. I don't think they're in a position to cut him yet. I think they have to figure out a way. Look, right now his salary is built into the cap already for this season. They need cap space and relief. They're going to get it. I think they're going to get rid of Andrew Norwell. That saves you just a little over $2 million. I think they're going to get rid of Chase Roulier. That saves you a little bit over $4 million. So right there, you're talking about, close to $7 million being freed up. And then you go from there, right? You look at where you can cut costs, and see if you can scrounge enough together where you don't have to move on from a guy like Kendall Fuller. I don't think we're in a position yet to move on from Kendall Fuller. I don't. And I don't think that would be a wise move. And so clearly they have something up their sleeve, but we don't quite know what that something or some things are at this moment. But a lot of people keep pointing to Kendall Fuller because of the moves that have been made. But I just keep looking and saying, it ain't him. It can't be him. It shouldn't be him. Because, again, you're one or two injuries away from being right where we were last year. And they brought in a number of guys, right? They brought in Cam Dantzler. I talked about the young boys that they brought in last year, that are a year, smarter, a year more, advanced and developed in the system that could have a chance. But when it's all said and done, I like my core five at corner because I feel like if you're serious about your defensive back group, you should keep five corners and no less than four safeties. You keep 5 and 5 if you'd like. But to me, I'm keeping five corners. You want to cut a corner or you want to trim off some fat, then you trim it off at the safety position and go with four safeties. But I like the core five that we could potentially be putting on the roster. And that would be as strong as a five as you would probably find in the division. Maybe not the Eagles, at corner with, what they were able, because even Keely Ringo, who I don't love, is still a hell of a corner to have as your third option as a boundary corner, So Kendall Fuller, Emmanuel Forbes, Benjamin St. Juice, Danny Johnson, and Cam Dantzler. If you tell me that's my 5 corners, I feel really good about that, right? Feel really good about that because I'm considering Quan Martin a safety. You know, when the pick was announced, and you got to listen to how they announced the pick because that tells you the NFL forces you to designate what that player is, how you view them. Now, that can change, obviously, but they designated him as a safety when he was taken, right? Braden Daniels was designated as a tackle when he was selected. Could he play guard? Absolutely. But they see him as a tackle. So do I. So I think he's a safety. So I'm not counting him in that group. So when you look at the safety position, it's Defoe, Cam Curl, there's Percy Butler, there's Jeremy Reeves, and now you got Quan Martin. Those are your 5 safeties. I feel good about that group. I feel good about the 5 corners that we can put on the field. I feel really good about all of that. You get rid of Kendall Fuller, I feel less good about the cornerback situation. Now you're asking one of these young boys to step in that I have zero confidence in, whether it's Rashad Wildgoose or it's the Penn State kid that we got last year. So at the end of the day, Kendall's on the last year of his deal. I say you hang on to him and you see what's really good. So that's the assumption that everybody's making, that Kendall's going to be swept up in these slew of cuts that have to be looming. I don't know if he's going to be on the block or not. I wouldn't be shocked if he is, because I think between him, I'd cut Leno before I cut him. I'll just tell you that right now. I cut Charles Leno before I cut him. But that's dangerous because as bad as some of y'all make Charles Leno out to be, it could get a lot worse at left tackle if Braden Daniels isn't legit, if Cosme can't kick over there and play left tackle, if Cornelius Lucas can't step in and be formidable. It could get real ugly over there, quick, fast, and in a hurry. But this is why you have these mini camps. This is why you put in this work to see if this is something that you can do. They'll know right away, hey, we can get rid of Charles Leno. They'll know. This is the time when teams, they get their hands on these prospects and they get them to these rookie mini camps, which will be happening here in a week or two. And they get them to their facility and they get them out on the field. And that's when guys get cut. Because now I know what I got. Okay. I've got to put my hands on you. I got to lay eyes on you on the practice field. And now I know what you're capable of. Now you can get rid of Charles Leno. Now you can get rid of this guy. Now you can get rid of that guy. That's coming. That's how we got Charles Leno. That's how we got Bobby McCain. Teams drafted players at those positions, got them into their facility, saw what they were about, and said, okay, we can move on from you. We can move on from you. And we can move on from you. And that's what we're going to do. And I'd move on from Leno before I moved on from Kendall Fuller. Both of them, I think, have a chance to be gone next year anyway. Leno has 2 years left on his deal, but there's an exit ramp. You can get out of it right now if you want. It's not going to be without a little bit, of dead cap. But you can get out of it right now and save yourself a little bit of money. You save yourself even more next year if you waited. Be smarter to do it next year. But if you need the bread now, you can do it now. Fuller's off the books next year. This is the last year of his deal. So it's a good problem to have. I'd rather be talking about having an abundance than working at a deficit. All right. So it's a good problem to have. Frank Addington says the Commanders signed Chase Bryce from Appalachian State. Think he can win the 3rd quarterback. I like him. I like him a lot. I actually thought he was going to get drafted. Thought he would be one of those, 6th or 7th round guys that was going to get drafted. There were so many quarterbacks that got drafted, man. Like I told you, 14. I wonder if that's an NFL record. That's a lot of quarterbacks, man. I like that they added him because I think he can beat out Jake Fromm personally. Game Effects. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Game Effects writes, smash that like button for Louie. Y'all heard him. Public service announcement put out there by Game Effects. Thank you for the PSA, Game Effects. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps this channel exponentially. Please, if you haven't already done so, there's over 740 of you out there. If you really want to help, just hit the like button. Only 200 likes. That's ridiculous. Hit the like button, please. Thank you for that public service announcement. Game Effects. Carson Rivas. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. I remember the first time I saw your thumbnail, I thought you were an Eagles fan. You was like, nah, I'm a Washington fan. That was my rec league team or something like that. I forgot, high school team or something like that. I was like, oh, okay. You got me. Carson writes, Lou, what do you think about the addition of Jartavius Martin mean for the future? Quan Martin, to me, solidifies the slot for us. It's huge. I think I know where you're getting at. Could this be the beginning of the end of Cam Curl in Washington? Maybe. You got to make decisions. You can't re-sign everybody. I think Cam Curl can be re-signed, though. Again, the beauty of our situation is we're not paying a quarterback at this current juncture. Okay. That's the most expensive purchase that you'll make. Look at quarterback as a house. Okay. Right now, we've got some fancy purchases. We got a nice little car that we just purchased in Deron Payne. Got another little, car that we purchased in Jonathan Allen. Terry McLaurin. That was a fly purchase right there, and so we've purchased some stuff. We've invested in some things. But the big purchase, though, we still renting right now. Okay. We still don't have a house that we are actually putting equity into right now. We still renting. We still giving somebody our hard-earned bread. At some point, you want to put equity in something and you want to own it. That's buying a house. That's getting a quarterback. Well, that's the biggest purchase you're going to make in your life is your house. That's what Washington is kind of, mulling over right now, hoping that they find a guy. You're not going to just buy any house. It's got to be the right house, right? Because it's a big purchase. In saying that, you're allowed to buy a nice car or two. You're allowed to get a nice, expensive piece of jewelry, or spend $1,000 on a pair of jeans, or a purse, or a hat, or a shirt, or shoes. You're allowed to splurge on other things because there isn't that big purchase of a house yet. So I think you can pay a Cam Curl because you aren't paying a quarterback. But if they get to a situation where that gets a little pricey and they don't think the money he's asking for is worth the production they've gotten from him, and they can say, hey, we got some dude. We got Percy Butler. We got Quan Martin. Hey, we good over here. So we'll see. I think Cam Curl is a part of the future of this football team as well. I think he's one of those core pieces. I don't see him going anywhere. And I don't think Quan Martin's arrival affects him or his situation here with Washington. I think they look at Quan Martin as another piece that they're adding to the puzzle that they think ultimately they're going to be able to put together to help this defense be one of the better units in the NFC. That's what I think. I don't think they're looking at Quan Martin as a replacement for Cam Curl. If it happens to turn out that way, so be it. But I don't think that's how they view it. They're adding another piece to the puzzle and hoping that Cam Curl plays his best football alongside, Defoe and, Quan Martin, and helps this defense reach new heights. That's what I think they're hoping. The more versatile pieces you can put on the field, the more diverse you can be as a defense. Because you can line Cam Curl up almost anywhere. Same with Quan Martin, right? And because Defoe has so much speed, he gives you the ability to play single high, go cover three, and have some flexibility to do some things. And so that's what you're looking for. The ability to have your safeties and have guys be so versatile that you can rock and roll your safeties. Have them doing different things. Let's see. Carson Rivas, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Carson, who writes, do you think the person who might have benefited the most from the draft could be St. Juice? No, I don't feel that way yet. Because he could very well end up in the slot behind what they did. So he wouldn't benefit from that. Because I'm pretty sure he would rather play outside. If they ask him to move inside again, he'd do it. He's a team guy. But his best football, and he knows it, is outside as a corner, as a boundary corner. So I could argue the contrary, that this draft might have hurt him from the standpoint of they may think about kicking him inside, because that may be the best way to keep Kendall Fuller on the field is, Kendall Fuller at one corner, Emmanuel Forbes at the other boundary corner, and Juice inside as your nickel. That could be the best way to keep all three on the field. And then you might have certain formations where they take one of those guys off the field and bring Quan Martin onto the field. You may have a formation where both of those guys are on the field. And you take, an extra backer off the field and you put in an extra defensive back, and you got 6 DBs on the field, 3 corners and 3 safeties on the field. So, and all of that is dictated by what the offense is doing. The offense puts 4 receivers on the field, or they want to spread you out and they want to flex their tight end out. You can do that. So, we'll see what happens. Again, Washington played nickel over 60% of the time last year. That's their base is pretty much 4-2-5. That's their base defense, pretty much. That's considered nickel in the NFL. So, at the end of the day, they're gonna have to figure out what they're gonna do. But Juice could be kicked inside. It happened to him last year. It could happen again this year. I'm hoping that they saw how well he played on the outside last year, and they just, again, I'm sick of this yo-yoing back and forth shit. I said the same thing about Cosme earlier. As a former athlete, I can tell you that there's never any better feeling as an athlete than clarity. When your role is defined for you and you know exactly what your coach is looking for from you, there is no better feeling than that. Because now you can just go out and play. I don't have to think about shit. When I played basketball, I knew my role. I'm a 3-and-D guy. I know what I'm coming in here to do. I'm in here to be the head of the snake on this trap that we running, and I'm here to knock down open threes. Okay? Space the floor. I know what I'm here to do. I need them to define what it is they want Benjamin St. Juste to do and stop playing around with him. He can't be an elite boundary corner if you keep moving him around. Just put him down and leave him there. Feel the same way about Sam Cosme. So we'll see what happens. Jordan Major. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jordan Major writes, why have we still not gone back to get Eric Flowers? Look, one thing Ron has shown in his time here, I can't speak for his time in Carolina, I can only speak for his time here in Washington, is that while he'll admit he made a mistake with his actions, he's not doubling back and admitting he made a mistake by going back and retrieving a player that he's previously cut. Didn't do it with Landon Collins, didn't do it with Eric Flowers, and he's not going to do it now, okay? There's been times where we've cut guys and we needed them. And you go, hey, man, he's still available, dude. Go get him. At least pick up the phone and see what's really good. And Ron didn't do it, Once they move on from somebody, they're not going back. So I can't see them going out. And honestly, I was shocked because the rest of the league was like, nah, we good on Eric Flowers. Nobody picked him up last year. He didn't play football last year. That was shocking to me. Shocking. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy JP writes, Lou, what's going on, JP? First off, not a terrible draft. Y'all fans are mad because we didn't have an A+ draft. Good. Maybe these mofos F around this year and go 11-5. LOL. Yeah, because I think we were really hyped about last year's draft. Trading back, getting Jahan Dotson, and a lot of people didn't love the Fedarian Mathis pick in the second round. But after that, I think a lot of people I loved Brian Robinson. I think most people love Brian Robinson. I think Percy Butler, a lot of people were getting excited about him last year. And obviously, getting Cole Turner, who was a guy we talked about for the longest during the process last year, getting him and getting Sam Howell in the 5th round, which felt like a steal, and it still feels like a steal, even more so now that he's going to be our starter this year. And just seeing all the things that we were able to do last year in the draft, I think it encouraged everyone, and you felt really good. And I think it's a little bit different this year. So, and look, I feel good about last year's draft. I feel really good about last year's draft. And we thought it was a good draft. So we'll see what happens with this year's draft. What I've realized with our fan base in particular, it's funny because I've said this before. We're so battered and bruised. We're so damaged that we don't know what we want. Okay. Our fan base is as confused as it gets. And I can't even be mad at them because we have been beat up as a fan base. We've been beat up. And the people that have been beat up the longest know what they don't want more so than the people who have just started getting their asses whooped. So for me, I'm not about the pizzazz and the sizzle. I'm not looking for the big, shiny objects. We did that shit with Dan Snyder when he first got here, and it did not work. And it actually was the absolute worst thing that we could have done as a franchise. I'm more scarred from those moves that were made back in those days. And when Joe Gibbs came on board and we fired up Redskins 1 for Antoine Randall and Adam Archuleta and all of those guys, I'm more scarred and damaged and bruised from those moves than any of the small nickel and dime moves Bruce Allen made. Okay. And Bruce made a bunch of those and wanted to pat himself on the back. I don't want flashy. I'm not looking for the wow pick. I'm looking for the right pick. We don't know if Brian Branch was the right pick. We don't know if Christian Gonzalez was the right pick. We just know that those guys' names have been out there more than the other guys, right? Christian Gonzalez's name was out there more than Emmanuel Forbes for most of you. A lot of y'all didn't watch Emmanuel Forbes for real. A lot of y'all didn't watch Christian Gonzalez for real. Some of y'all did. Some of y'all did the work. And you just believe Christian Gonzalez is better. Touche. We can have a discussion. I've already told you guys, if you've done the work, we can talk. But a lot of y'all haven't. And that's okay. I've already said, if I wasn't paid to do this, I probably wouldn't be watching as much film and, as well versed in some of these players as I am. This is what I do for a living. So yeah, I'm all over it. But if I were just a fan, nah, I'm not putting in all that work for what? Once we draft a player, then I'll take a look at him. I'll watch his highlights or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So I can't be mad at that fan that just watched some highlights and said, I like Christian Gonzalez, or they heard Christian Gonzalez's name 55,000 times during the process and said, yeah, we had a chance to get that guy. Why we didn't get that guy? I'm not mad at that fan for that. Doesn't mean that fan's wrong. Doesn't mean that he's right. Hell, doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. We'll see. At the end of the day, they made picks with conviction. Either they're going to be right or they're going to be wrong. Either way, if I'm going down, and I told y'all this before too, and this is the mindset of a coach of a GM, of a team president, people that handle football operations. If I'm going to go down, I'm going down with my shit, not yours. If I'm going down with the guys I believe in. Whether that's right or wrong, we'll find out. But if they feel like if they're going down, they're going down with Emmanuel Forbes, not a guy who on tape wanted no parts of tackling in a sport where you have to tackle. That is a part of your job description. And he was like, nah, I'm good. They're like, nah, I'm going to go with the dude that might be 170 pounds, but he's going to throw his body. He's going to throw that 170 around. And he's going to make plays on the football. I don't have a problem with that. So we'll see what ends up happening. Only time will tell. Time will tell. And yes, Stephen Harris. Anyway, I digress. I just saw somebody say Banks is a much better player than Forbes. How so? I don't know how you get that. I don't understand how you get that determination. I'm not saying that I'm not definitively saying that you're wrong. I'm just you're making a statement as if that's the spoken word. Banks wasn't even a consistent player on his team. You watch film and this dude ain't even on the field half the time for the Maryland Terps. There's some upside there, don't get me wrong. But I don't think that Banks is clearly the better prospect. I disagree with that, but that's no here nor there. Billy A, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Billy A, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, I'm okay with this year's draft because last year I felt we drafted mostly backups. We got better this draft, so I'm fine. I don't like their process for drafting. They reach for their guys unnecessarily. I didn't think we had gotten a bunch of backups last year. But to your point, I do think that this year in particular, and I did feel like in past drafts, they did a really good job of allowing the board to speak to them. I don't think they did that this year. They were very intentional with what they did this year. And I think they would tell you that. Ron has pretty much said it, allowing them to film him driving to the facility saying if Emmanuel Forbes is on the board at 16, he's going to be hard to pass up. That's showing intentionality. You already knew what you were going to do before teams started making picks. You'd already made your mind up. When you tell me, hey, these meetings that we had with some of these guys, when Martin Mayhew says these were some outstanding meetings, the best I've ever had, that means you were going to take these players because you felt really good about them after having them at your facility and then matching that up with the film. You said, we can't pass on this player. That shows intentionality. So to your point, they didn't allow the board to speak to them maybe until later in the draft. And that to me is a bit disappointing. But in the same breath, I do admire their ability to say, hey, this is our guy right here. We're not waffling. We don't care who else is available. This is our guy right here. Now, that could ultimately be a mistake. But again, if you're going to do it, say it with your chest. Okay? Say it with some conviction. Say it with your chest. If Emmanuel Forbes is your dude, say it with your chest. That's what they did by passing on Christian Gonzalez. They said it with their chest. If Quan Martin is your guy, say it with your chest. That's what they did. They could have traded up and took Brian Branch, but they was like, no, we got a guy. Say it with your chest then. They did. I got no problems with that. None. So again, I've said this already. I'll say it again. I'm going to be keeping tabs on these other players to see what they're doing. And we're going to see what our guys do. And at the end, we'll see who wins out and what decision was the better one. Ron might not even be here to have to deal with the repercussions of that. Ron could get fired after this season, and we could still be bitching and moaning about these picks 2-3 years down the road, and Ron ain't even here and ain't been here for 3-4 years. So we'll see what happens. All right. Got another super chat. This one is from 1/6 Devil Doc. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, training camp battles are going to be interesting. Offensive line, secondary, DN, and running back. Where are we going to cut fat from? Are we going to keep at least 10 offensive linemen? Generally, that's how you like to do it. You like to keep 10 O linemen. They did it last year. I thought they were going to trim some fat off, and they did not at offensive line. There will be some interesting battles. Remember, though, last year, how many receivers did they keep last year? Was last year the year they kept 7, or was that the year before that where they kept 7 receivers? I can't remember. Let me see if I still have my I'll pull up the final 53-man roster from last year, so we can see how many receivers they kept last year. 2022 Commanders final roster. Let's see. Let me get more specific. Final 53-man roster. Now it should come up. Here we go. All right. So last year we kept 6 receivers: Jahan, Diami, Curtis, Dax, Terry, and Cam Sims. We kept 4 running backs last year. So I made the statement earlier that I don't know if they were going to keep 4. They kept 4 last year, so that means they could keep 4 this year. So I think you're going to see Chris Rodriguez slide right into that J.D. McKissick roster spot. And there's still space because Jonathan Williams does not have to make this team. There's still space for them to go out and sign Jerick McKinnon. So I'd still be on the lookout for that. If they don't do it, it wouldn't bother me at all. And I know they like Jonathan Williams a lot, but they could definitely upgrade that if they wanted to. One thing I see different this year where you can trim off some fat is we kept 3 quarterbacks last year because you had Sam Howell as a 5th-round pick. You had to keep him on the roster. You weren't going to expose him to the rest of the league. There's no such thing this year, right? You didn't draft a quarterback. There is no developmental quarterback on the roster currently. You don't have to keep Jake Fromm. Nobody's going to fight you over him. If the Bryce kid out of App State wins out, you don't have to keep him on the roster. You could develop him behind the scenes on the practice squad. I think they're only keeping 2 quarterbacks on the roster this year. So that's one area where you can trim off some fat right there. They kept 5 tight ends last year. I didn't realize this. They kept Curtis Hodges, and then they put him on IR. So that's how they were able to keep him. They may do that again, but we'll see. Offensive line wise, they kept 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 last year. So it was not 10 last year. It was 10 the year before. It was 9 last year. So they could probably keep, and that's why they like the positional flex thing, because it allows you to not have to keep a 10th, but rather 9. So they could do that again. We had 5 edge rushers last year. That number, I think, is going to change. I think you got to keep 6. We'll see, because now that Shaka's suspended, he made the team last year, primarily because of special teams. But obviously, I thought he made the team because there was no Chase Young. So just sub Shaka Tony out for Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Casey Toohill, James Smith-Williams, and F.A. Obata. That's 5 dudes right there. And you just drafted KJ Henry, who's making the football team. So unless one of these dudes, Casey Toohill or James Smith-Williams, or even F.A. Obata are the odd man out, which I don't think, you may have to add an extra defensive end. Somebody's going to be left without a spot at defensive end. I wouldn't mind seeing like a Casey Toohill, or James Smith. James Smith-Williams is fine. It'd be Casey Toohill for me, but we'll see. Daniel Wise, we kept 4 defensive tackles last year. I see that being the theme again. Because Daniel Wise made the team last year. This year, it's going to be our Captain Insano will be up here. I forgot his name. I drew a blank, but John Ridgeway. And you're keeping Payne, Allen, and Mathis again. Linebacker, we kept 5 last year. We kept 5. And I could see them doing that again. Jamin Davis, David Mayo, Milo Eifler, Dejon Harris. You sub out Cole for Cody Barton. Got Jamin Davis. I think David Mayo is going to be around again. Milo Eifler. And I think instead of Dejon Harris, I think that's going to be Khaleke Hudson. So there go your 5 linebackers. Last year, we only kept 4 corners. I don't think you can do that again this year. You got to keep 5. Last year, we kept 5 safeties. I think you're going to do that again. Jeremy Reeves, Percy Butler, Cam Curl, Derek Forrest, Bobby McCain. So just sub out McCain and add in Quan Martin. You're going to have to, you take out William Jackson III. Obviously, you're going to add in Forbes. But I think you got to also add in, clearly, he signed a guaranteed contract. So I think Danny Johnson's going to make the team this year. Signed a 2-year, $7 million deal. So Danny Johnson is being added to this list. And I think you got to also look at my man from Minnesota and assume that he's going to make the football team too, Cam Dantzler. So you're going to have to trim off some fat. Maybe you get rid of one of these linebackers. To your point, it's going to be interesting. They kept 5 tight ends. I don't think you're going to have the liberty to be able to do that this year. You're going to have to get rid of one of these dudes that you really like. And you kept 6 receivers last year. I think you're keeping 6 again. But maybe you could shave off one of those roster spots and make it 5. I still think you're keeping 6. I think you're keeping 4 running backs. So you do shave off one of your quarterbacks, so that helps. I think you shave off a tight end, that helps. And I think you go from there because then you can add in another defensive end. You can add in another corner. And I think you could take off one of these linebackers. And if you wanted to add that back to the offensive side of the football, because you always try to keep it as even as you can. Usually it doesn't end up even, right? Obviously, there's 53 players. So you can't have a equal split, but you want it to be 25, 25, 3 because you got 3 specialists, right? But if it's 26, 24, that's fine. You don't want to get to where it's 27, 23, right? You don't want to get too far on one side or the other. So if you're going to trim off some fat at QB and potentially tight end, to add to the cornerback position and defensive end, then you probably need to trim off some fat at linebacker and add that back to maybe say tight end, or offensive line, since you drafted 2 more guys. So that would be my guess. But anyway, that's a conversation that we will have plenty of times before the season starts. That's an initial introduction into that conversation. That's a great comment. 16 double dot. There will be a lot of competition. That's what you want. I want tough decisions. 3 years ago, there were no tough decisions. Okay. Like I said, Isaiah Wright and Dontrell Inman were on this roster, along with Antonio Gandy Golden. This is what we were putting on the field at receiver with Steven Sims Jr. It's a new day here in Washington. All right. Thank you for that super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, B-Rob and C-Rod behind Howell with the new improved O-line going to give Ron his 2-to-1 pass ratio. Eric B working to get nastier with the offense. I don't think that they're really going to have the 2-to-1 run to pass ratio unless we cooking on offense to the point where we jumping out in front of teams and then we able to run the football a whole hell of a lot in the second half of ball games. I still think, when he said that, he clarified it, that they want to score more points so that they can't control the ball, similar to what the Eagles do. The Eagles jump out, and that was their MO last year. Jump out to big leads in the first half and then grind you in the second half. And there were a lot of times where the Eagles didn't score in the second half of games. They didn't have to. They were up so big in the first half, they just pretty much ran out the clock, ran the football, got behind that big offensive line and, ran the football and dared you to stop it. So that's kind of the plan, is to be more aggressive offensively, score more points. And then, because I've made jokes about this, but how often is it that we play with a lead? It doesn't happen very often. We're not accustomed to having sizable leads at that. Now, just a lead, we've had our fair share, there have been plenty, but more often than not, we're losing, and we're losing big. Or we're losing, trailing, we're within striking distance, and then, we got to come back and win, like we did against Jacksonville, like we did against Indy, but we don't handle being up very well because we're not used to it. It's like uncharted territory for us. We didn't know how to act when we got up by 10 against Minnesota. I was nervous the entire Texans game, and we were up 23-0. And I'm over here like, hey, man, y'all better get this stop. They're getting some momentum. I didn't know how to act. I told you, we so scarred over here. We don't know how to conduct ourselves. We up 10-0 on the Giants, and that shit evaporated before halftime. We trailing, So we have to learn how to win, how to conduct ourselves when, taking the lead, striking first. That's not something we do very often. And I'm hoping that we can establish a new culture in that regard, a new mindset. So often we're playing from behind. We've given out the numbers in this Rivera era about how many times we've been down 20 plus points in the first half of games. I mean, this shit's ridiculous. I've never heard of any such thing. Hoping that stops now. Maybe we will get to a 2-to-1 because we having so much success on offense. Highly unlikely, though. Jamal Hamlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Jamal writes, hey, Lou, what's going on, Jamal? I can honestly say I'm not disappointed. I really like the UDFA. Allen, he's a playmaker, and I think he'll be our return guy. It's all about our coaching staff now. Yeah. I mean, that goes without saying, though, because you can get talented players, but if you don't have a staff that can cultivate that talent, that can take it and put it in positions to be successful in the best version of themselves, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter. And that's what I've been trying to convey to you guys, is that it's cool to have a ton of talent, but you got to coach that talent up. And we saw that with our defensive line. There was a reason why Matt Ioannidis wanted to be traded when Sam Mills III became the defensive line coach. Yeah, he loved Jim Tom. All of them did. But they also realized we went from who we perceived to be the best defensive line coach that we've had in our career. Jonathan Allen played at Alabama under Nick Saban, and he was like, yo, Jim Tom is the best coach I've ever had. And you go from that to Sam Mills III, and you're like, what is this shit they talking about, man? What is he talking about? Get me the hell out of here. That shit matters. I think we've got some really good coaches. We saw the difference with Jeff Skanina taking over on the defensive line. We saw the difference up front. We're going to see what happens at receiver with Bobby Ingram. We're going to see what happens in the secondary with Brent Vesselmeyer. We're going to see what happens on the offensive line with Travell Wharton. We're going to see what happens with these quarterbacks, with Tavita Pritchard. We're going to see. Coaching does matter. Absolutely. So we're going to see. Redneck Rocker 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Redneck Rocker writes, hope we get Chase Bryce as our QB3. Roll Nears. I like him. I remember that game against North Carolina. I want to say it was this past season. It was one of the freakiest games I've ever watched in college football in my life. And he was throwing some dimes in that game, making shit happen. So I can't wait to see, what he's able to do, because we should see a considerable amount of him if he's able to, stick on the roster in camp, through camp as a camp arm and things of that nature. We should see a considerable amount of him in the preseason. He's going to be better than Jake Fromm. I'm pretty confident in saying that. But we'll see. Neither one of them are making the football team, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Jalen Dorsett, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. You know what, though? And thinking about it, that may be why they didn't draft a quarterback. Didn't feel like they wanted to invest a pick in a guy that they would have had to maybe keep on their roster so that they didn't lose him. Instead, you go out and get an undrafted guy. Nobody else wanted him. Clearly, nobody drafted him. And now you can just allow him to develop and hopefully be your backup quarterback next year. I mean, it's not smart. It's not a bad way of going about it if you think about it, because they really didn't have a roster spot for a third quarterback. We just talked about the roster and how they're going to have to trim off fat in certain areas. Quarterback's one of them, because you had 3 last year. Now you got 2. So, not a bad way of going about it now that I think about it in that regard. Thank you for the super chat, Jalen. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, without these picks, we in the offs. Hashtag SHO. Imagine no. I don't know what you're talking about, bro. You got me on that one. Got my hands up. That feel luckish, so I'm going to just keep it pushing. Carson Reeves, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Carson writes, still a possibility to get Buddha? You talk about Baker? Nah, we were never in that conversation. And we don't need him. I mean, that's part of the reason you just went and got Quan Martin. You don't need a Buddha Baker. We got a bunch of guys in that secondary now. So, and I don't think he was ever a possibility anyway. I'm guessing he'll end up in Philadelphia. That's where everybody goes, right? So he'll end up in Philadelphia in about a month and a half from now, right before camp. The Eagles will make a deal to get him, like they did Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year. That's my guess. Video Channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Video Channel writes, Ron and Marty's after the draft, we're fine in the East. They didn't say that. But I think they feel like we're fine with our roster. I do think they feel that way. They're fine with the selections that they've made, and they like the direction of the roster and what they've been able to accomplish and build. Now they're pretty much saying, all right, Sam, offense, let's see what you got, because they're the opposite of me. Their confidence resides with the defense. Ron thinks the defense is good. Just needs a tweak here, tweak there. Jack thinks the defense is good, just needs a tweak here, tweak there. And Ron is looking at the offense like you're the problem. And he's not wrong. The offense has been the problem for the last 3 years. However, I'm looking at it in the reverse. Like, I expect the offense to be better because Sam Howell is better than anything we've had at the quarterback position since Ron got here. So I expect the offense to be better. And this is the most weapons we've had since Ron has gotten here. And I expect the offensive line to be better because it can't be any worse than it was last year. And so I expect the offense to be better. I can't be assured that the defense will follow suit, however, because we aren't playing Sam Ellinger next year. We're not playing Marcus Mariota. We're not playing Davis Mills next year. We're not playing Justin Fields next season, or at least I don't think we're playing Justin Fields next season. Where did the Bears finish in the NFC South, North? Dead last, right? So maybe we will see Justin Fields this year. But you get where I'm going. Like, and Fields may be much better than when we saw him last year. So they're going to have to step their game up, and I hope they're ready. That's all I'm saying. Let's see. Got a super here from Billy A. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Billy A, who writes, I'm okay with moving on from Kendall. He was getting burnt the first 6 games of the season. 2 pick sixes is not going to change my mind. He's okay at best. I'm not telling you that Kendall Fuller is an all-pro player, but I think a lot of you don't really truly understand the cornerback position and how bad it can get. I don't know if you guys have been watching other teams and you're thinking, hey, we need to get some guys like that. It could be a lot worse here. A lot worse. Kendall Fuller played a lot of good football last year, a lot better football than you guys give him credit for. And it was a lot more good Kendall than bad Kendall. So I'm not telling you that he didn't get his fair share of plays made on him. Every corner in the league does. Don't let anybody lie to you and tell you that, corners aren't out here getting work, because every corner gets some work. Some get more than others, but everybody is out here getting some work at some point. Kendall had his fair share of work, and I would challenge you to show me instances where Kendall was absolutely getting cooked. He's not in the screen. He's the receivers got him about 2-3 steps. I could point to some of those instances in 2020 and in 2021. I don't know of many of them. There were a lot of plays Kendall gave up last year, and he was right there. I think about the Devontae Smith catch down to like the 2-yard line. Kendall Fuller's right there. I contend that Bobby McCain should have picked the shit off, and I still want to know where the hell Bobby's going. But even with that said, Kendall was right there. It's just a great throw by Jalen Hurts. Should have been picked off, but it was a good throw. If the safety ain't gonna make a play on it, which he should have, then that was a great throw. And then the play in the end zone to Devontae Smith, where he went up and got the football, it's a hell of a play. Kendall's right there. He just went up and made a play. He gave up some shit last year. I'm not saying he didn't, but I mean, and he got beat in the Jacksonville game early. I remember him getting run behind in that game, but he didn't give up a touchdown. He was the most solid corner last year that we had. And I know some of y'all are saying that's not saying much. I think he was good last year. I won't say really good. He was good last year. If you're willing to move on from Kendall Fuller, God bless you. I'm not saying that they ultimately won't move on from him, because it may be a business decision that has to happen in order for them to be in a healthy cap situation. But if I'm them, I'm trying to do everything I can to not move on from Kendall Fuller, because I like the position I'm in. No, I don't like that. I love the position I'm in at corner right now. I love the flexibility that I have in my defensive backfield with both the safety and cornerback positions. I don't want to change that. I want to go into the season having the problem of saying, how are we going to get all these guys on the field? That's a great problem to have. I wouldn't move on from Kendall Fuller. You can't say that the 2 pick sixes aren't going to change your mind. I get that. Those were the only 2 defensive touchdowns we had last year. I don't think we had, well, that's not true. Casey Toohill had a defensive touchdown last year as well against the Eagles. I don't know if we had a single defensive touchdown in 2021. I know we had one in particular in 2020 with Cam Curl against the 49ers. Don't know if there was another one in 2020 or not. Deron Payne had a safety against the Eagles if we're just counting points. But touchdowns, defensive touchdowns, we don't score many of them here in Washington. We don't do that. And he delivered 2 of them last year. For a team that doesn't get a ton of turnovers, you trying to give away one of the few guys that's creating them? You think that's a good idea? I'm a pass on that. But I understand where you're coming from the standpoint of if you don't buy into the Kendall Fuller brand, then you're like, hey, we can move on from him. If you're looking to trim off some fat, he's some fat, trim him off. I hear you. I'm not listening, but I hear you loud and clear. Carson Rivas, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Carson writes, Lou, last question from me, but love being in the chat. Appreciate you, man. Chopping it up with the kid on this impromptu stream on a Saturday night. He says, who has benefited and who has been hurt most by the current offseason? So I would say that Percy Butler was the one that's probably been hurt the most. Just from a standpoint of them adding another guy. That Percy Butler was drafted last year to do exactly what we just drafted Quan Martin to do. So clearly they didn't like the progression that they saw from Percy Butler throughout the year in practice, things of that nature. So you would think that them moving on from Bobby McCain was their way of saying, all right, Percy, we about to give you an opportunity. That's not what they said. So this draft, I would say Percy and Chase Roullier, obviously. Chase Roullier is good as gone. The acquisition of Nick Gates and now Ricky Stromberg pretty much spells, and the re-signing of Tyler Larson pretty much spells the end of Chase Roullier here in Washington. So he's got to be at the top of the list because he's getting cut. I think, from a standpoint of a guy that'll be here, but probably won't see the field if everything goes the way that it's supposed to, it's probably Percy Butler. He probably thought he was going to get an opportunity this year. And he had a strong finish to the season in that Dallas game in week 18, if you recall. So he probably thought, ended the season on a high note. There's no more Bobby McCain. I'm about to get a shot. No, the hell you are not. No, you are not. So pump the brakes and drive slow, homie. Drive slow. I think so it's been a rough go of it for him. I'm guessing. I could be wrong, and he could have a default type year 2 leap, and they could decide, nah, we're going to rock with Percy. I don't see that happening, but we'll see. As far as who has benefited the most, I think it's Sam Howell. Sam Howell, watch them clean out the quarterback position. There's no Heineke. There's no Wentz. He's been essentially given the keys. They brought in Jacoby Brissett, a non-threatening backup. They fortified the offensive line. They added another weapon in the backfield. And they're making the defense better, which is going to help him because we expect them to generate more turnovers, create shorter fields by getting off the field on third downs, which creates, easier scoring opportunities. So Sam Howell is the biggest winner of the offseason. He's going to get an opportunity to start. And they didn't draft a quarterback, and they didn't go out and get a guy to really push him. So I'd say it's Sam Howell. And I'd say the guy that probably benefited the least is Chase Roullier, and, a close second would be Percy Butler. And I mean, if you want to throw Chase Young in there, you could. Them not picking up his 5th-year option, obviously, but he's just got to go out and prove it. Just got to go out and prove it. Thank you for that super chat, Carson Rivas. Got another super chat here from Stanley Frederic, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Stanley writes, "Hey Louie, thoughts on Giants and Eagles picks?" I thought the Eagles had a phenomenal draft yet again. They did it again. Just when you think it was safe, the Eagles go and do some shit like this and totally redeem themselves. All right. I'm thinking, yeah, man, got your roster poached in free agency. They brought back all the old farts. I'm like, yeah, got them old boys on the offense, on the defensive line. We gonna eat their ass up. And then they went and got a bunch of young boys. And I'm like, shit. They right back where they were last year. Maybe even better. Who knows? I'm thinking, all right, they probably a little bit less explosive and dynamic at running back. And then they trade for goddamn DeAndre Swift. And I'm like, shit. The move getting Keely Ringo doesn't move the needle for me. I'm not a Keely Ringo fan, so that one doesn't move me. But the Eagles being the Eagles, let me take one more last look at their picks in the draft. Because I feel like I'm missing one more Georgia Bulldog. I might not be, but I feel like I am. I feel like it was one more Georgia Bulldog in there. No, they got Tyler Steen and Sidney Brown, and I like both of those guys, specifically Tyler Steen. I'm like, God damn. Offensive line was already good, and you just added another beast to that offensive line potentially in Tyler Steen. Sidney Brown's a damn good defensive back. I told you their entire secondary was nasty. He's the other safety is Sidney Brown. So they got one of the Illinois safeties. We got the other one. And they got Tanner McKee out of Stanford as a backup. I'm not a Tanner McKee fan. So I don't know what that will actually do for them. But they got Marcus Mariota, so it's not really that big of a deal. They actually have a backup quarterback anyway. So the Giants, meanwhile, I love their first 4 picks. I've already stated this. I do not have so Deonte Banks in the first round, they traded up and snagged him. Really good pick. Corner was probably their biggest need on their roster. Interior offensive line was their second biggest need if it wasn't tied for first. And then they get John Michael Schmitz in the second. I thought that was a steal because I mocked them John Michael Schmitz in the first round, and they get him at 57 in the second round. So they knocked down their 2 biggest needs with 2 really good players. I thought John Michael Schmitz was the best center in the draft, and they get him in the second round. So that's phenomenal value. Jalen Hyatt in the third. I thought he was going to end up being an early second round pick. I thought he could easily be a fringe first, right? Well, he gets picked in the third. That's tremendous value if he is what we think he could be, which is Will Fuller the fifth, which is one of the best vertical threats in the entire league. That's a hell of a pick. Eric Gray is a running back that you guys know I have an affinity for. I talked about him profusely on the stream with Rio on the Draft Overload stream. So that's a damn good pick. That's a really good backup running back that they just got. Better than anybody that they had on their roster, if you ask me. And they had some solid guys. I don't love any of their other 3 picks, though. And again, this is where you get into the dangerous part of the draft because 6th round, 209, and 2 7th rounders, it just isn't anything left there, right? So I'm not killing them for that. What are they not going to make picks? They could give the picks away, but you don't do that. You just take a stab in the dark and see maybe you unearth a gem here in Jordan Riley as a defensive tackle out of Oregon at 243. Who knows? Javarius Owens out of Houston at the safety position may turn out to be a gem, a diamond in the rough, like Cam Curl was for us in the 7th round. Highly unlikely, though. I like what the Giants did. Their first 4 picks, absolutely, to me, potentially game changers, home runs. But these last 3 picks are strikeouts. 2 of them without taking the bat off your shoulder. So that's why I think Washington sneaks in front of them. But I like what the Giants did because honestly speaking, They're not worried about those last 3 dudes. They worried about these first 4 picks. All 4 of those dudes could have impacts year 1. Probably will have massive impacts year 1. Anyway, John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling it up. My guy JP writes, your Grizzlies got demolished last night. Good hard fought series. Much spec. My team got y'all this time though. Absolutely. I got a lot to say about that because I always get sentimental when the basketball season ends because my team is a playoff team now. So it hits different when you lose in the playoffs. But this is a big offseason for my Grizzlies because our championship window is officially open now. Officially open. The injuries derailed it this year, but if we're healthy next year, they got a decision to make on Dylan Brooks. We'll talk about that another time. I don't want to hijack this stream with that talk. I can do that another time, but I got a lot to say about that. But you guys got us, and now you await the winner of Kings and Warriors. I don't think you can beat either one of them. I'll just say that. But if you shoot better, if you shoot the way you did in Game 6, you'll have a shot. I just don't know if you can do that for 4 games out of 7. And those 2 teams can score the basketball. I don't know if you had 2 games where you didn't score 100 points in that series against us. That's not going to get it done. Because the Kings were the highest scoring team in the NBA this year, and we all know the Warriors can fill it up. So we'll see. You do have an advantage over the Warriors in particular, and that's inside. You're a much more physical team than they are, and you can kill them on the glass. So I could see you giving them a much harder time. I think Sacramento might be a little bit too much for y'all. They're faster. They're much like us, except they're fully healthy. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox has the injury, but they're a lot like us in that they want to get out and run and they can shoot it. You could be in some trouble if you have to play them. But again, we'll see. Jamal Hamlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Jamal, who writes, got 3 things to say. NHO. New how order. Y'all know what it is. Rolando Cedeno, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Rolando writes, hey Lou, you never finished the story with DeForest Buckner. Niners acquired a second and first and used those 2 firsts for Kinlaw, arthritic knees, and passed up Justin Jefferson. Horrible mistake. Now, what you do with that capital is up to you. All right. That's always the other half of the equation. But the first thing that you have to do is you have to get value first. Okay. They did that. They knew they couldn't re-sign both defensive tackles. So they traded one and got a haul for him. Okay. Now, what you do with that haul, that's up to you. All right. That's half of the equation. Half of the battle is getting the value that you think is worthy of the player that you're trying to move, which they did. The other half is maximizing the value that you just received. Jury's still out on that. Again, Javon Kinlaw hasn't played a lot of football for them, whether his knees are arthritic or not. He was super talented when they drafted him, hasn't been healthy. We'll see if that changes before his rookie deal is up. And, I don't know the specifics of them passing on Justin Jefferson. A lot of people passed on Justin Jefferson, including the Philadelphia Eagles. Shit happens. Okay. At the end of the day, you win some, you lose some. I mean, they traded up for Trey Lance. I still need to talk to Niners fan because he said that Trey Lance is going to be QB1, and he never answered me when I asked him, what are you talking about? I need answers. Why do you feel this way? So I'm still waiting for him to come back and talk to me. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, one thing I will say is, on paper, this secondary is stacked. Best it's looked in a long while. D line looks replenished, and linebacking corps, while not great, has some pieces as well. This D is full of dogs. That was the point that I was trying to make about not moving on from Kendall Fuller, is that you've put yourself in a position that we haven't really been in quite some time. And playing in the division that we play in with the Philadelphia Eagles and all the weapons that they have, the New York Giants and all the weapons that they now have, Darren Waller and the kid from Ohio State that was in Indianapolis that they signed to a 1-year deal, and now Jalen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson will be coming back from injury. They got all this stuff out there. And then Dallas, obviously, with CeeDee Lamb, and they traded for Brandon Cooks, and all the guys, and then Michael Gallup is now fully healthy, being a full year and some change removed from his ACL tear, and so they're going to be dangerous. Pollard at running back, and all the things that they bring to the table. So at the end of the day, you have to have dogs on defense in this division if you're going to survive. But I'm not looking to just survive. I'm looking to thrive. So I like what they've done. Rolando Cedeno, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, who's the new DB coach? Critical position coach. Brent Vesselmeyer. He was one of the assistants. He was really coaching specifically the safeties. And he got promoted from, assistant defensive backs coach to the defensive backs coach. So Brent Vesselmeyer, his history is essentially he's been Jack Del Rio's right-hand man when it comes to the secondary. He was with Jack in Oakland when Jack was the head coach. As soon as Jack got the job, he went and got his guy and brought him on board. And now that Chris Harris is gone, Jack promoted his guy to defensive backs coach. So Brent Vesselmeyer is now the defensive backs coach, and keeps a little bit of continuity there, a familiar voice that they've been hearing. So we'll see what kind of work he does. He's got a lot of weapons to work with, a lot of pieces to be able to play with. Let's see if he can get the most out of them. Fresh Montana, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Fresh Montana writes, salute, Lou. Appreciate you, Fresh. Says, I'm excited for the season. Love this draft, and the level of wide receivers Forbes went against versus Gonzalez isn't even close. Forbes dominated and is the right pick. Sam Howell will dominate. Defense is better. I mean, there's a lot of hope with this team. There's a lot of things that I feel like we've upgraded from last year's football team, which gives me hope that we can surpass this 8-win threshold, this 7-win threshold that we've kind of been stuck in. As my guy, Twin D likes to say, mired in mediocrity. That's what we've been. 7 wins, and then 8 last year. I think we have now put ourselves in a position to exceed that mediocrity and broaden our horizons. Last year, I tried to do that at 12-5, but I really thought 11 was the number with the schedule and the teams we were playing and how it was set up, that we needed to attack and come out early and do work early, and we didn't. We did the same thing, and if we do it again this year, it'll be the same results. If we come out and we start the season off 1-4, then the same shit's going to happen. We're going to get hot. We're going to pick up steam, and we're going to get back to 500 or hovering there around it. But the bottom's going to fall out eventually. Like, let's not do that. Let's get off to a fast start this year. And even if it's fast by definition, but we're 3-3 after 6 weeks, I'll take that. It's not great. It's not 5-1. It's not 4-2, but it ain't 1-4. It ain't 1-5. It ain't 2-6, which is what we've been each of the last 3 years. So if we could just not be fighting from behind, fighting from a deficit, when that 3 or 4 game heater hits, and now you're 7-3 instead of 6-6, it makes a difference. So let's hope that that's the case. There's a lot of things to be excited about. And I mean, we could go back and forth about Gonzalez or Forbes. If you like Forbes, then you'll make up your reasons as to why he was the better pick. At the end of the day, we'll see. I'm excited about Forbes because of his playmaking ability. That's what I'm excited about. I like takeaways. I like them a lot. This is why I wasn't the biggest fan of Benjamin St. Juste when we drafted him 2 years ago, because I said he doesn't take the ball away. PBUs are cool, but you don't punish the opposing quarterback for challenging you. That's what you want to do. You want to make a quarterback pay. Oh, you thought you was coming over here? Oh, you thought you really ate. All right, I'm going to show you what I'm about over here. Make them pay. Make them think twice about pulling the trigger on your side of the field. Juice don't do that, but Forbes does. So I'm looking forward to it. Got a super chat here from Frankie. Yo, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, and thank you for your generosity, man. Can't thank you enough. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Frankie, yo, writes, now that the draft is over, just want to say thanks for all the content and work you've put in. Optimism for the season begins now. It sure does. You know how we do it. This is the time of the year where I hype myself up. I have good reason to do it this year, though. The only time I haven't done it in the last 5 years, I would say, was 19 and 21 were the 2 years where I didn't hype myself up. Because 19, I knew we were going to stink. Jay Gruden was dead man walking. They drafted Dwayne Haskins in the first round. Case Keenum was going to be our starting quarterback. It was a mess. We saw the writing on the wall there, and our schedule was murderer's row to start. We said there's no way we're not starting the season off at a bare minimum 0-4, probably 0-5, but no less than 0-4. And I think we started 0-5 and then beat the Dolphins in week 6. If we don't beat the Dolphins in week 6 and they went for a 2, and one of the worst 2-point conversions I've ever seen in my life, we don't win that game, there's a realistic shot that we go 0-16 that season. We were that bad in 2019. And in 2021, Ryan Fitzpatrick was starting. You know how I feel about Ryan Fitzpatrick. There was no way we were going to win anything of note. Ryan Fitzpatrick has never been in the playoffs. No team that he's been on has ever made the postseason. There was just no way we were going to win with him at quarterback. So I had no hope for that season either. But every other season, your kid was turned. And I was trying to figure out a way how we could get to double digits. Last year I was on one because of the schedule. That was more so schedule related. I'm gonna be on one this year because of the talent. And that's got more substance behind it. You know, when you got to try to convince yourself that you're capable of winning 11 games because of a schedule. We still had, Heineke and Wentz at quarterback, and I was trying to convince myself Wentz was going to be able to get it done. Really more so hoping, that he could get it done. But it was a little bit of convincing myself because I'd seen him, be terrible at times, but he also had played well at times. I wasn't looking for elite Carson. I just wanted the one from Indy. We didn't get that, obviously. But again, as I said, now, this is one of my last times saying it because we don't really need to talk about Carson that often anymore. He's no longer here. We failed him first before he failed us. He started out like gangbusters. He threw a bunch of touchdown passes in the first, 2 games. He threw 7 touchdown passes in the first 2 games. Like, he was doing the Carson Wentz thing, and then the offensive line fell the hell apart in week 3, and that was that. His confidence was shot, and we know what else happened after that. But Frankie, yo, thank you for the super chat, man. Really do appreciate you. Thank you so much for the support, man. Dejan Bell, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Dejan writes, did you like Forbes over Banks? Personally, I did like Forbes over Banks. I feel like Banks is extremely raw. There's some really good tape, but there's also not enough evidence of him being able to stand up to elite competition. It's just not enough evidence of him doing that consistently. So you see flashes from him, but with Forbes, there's more proof. You see it over and over again. Again, I'll say this. If Emmanuel Forbes is the exact same height with the exact same tape, but he's 195 pounds, he's either the first or second corner taken in this draft. It's as simple as that. Literally, the only reason that he was removed from people's first round board was because he's rail thin. He had an exceptional 40 time. He's a good athlete. He's got ball skills. He's got length. He's got everything you're looking for. A lot of teams said to themselves, he's not big enough to withstand the rigors of the NFL. We can't spend an early round draft choice on him. Washington said he did it in the SEC at that size for 35 games and didn't miss a single one. We think he can survive. And they've already said, too, we're going to put some weight on him. Don't you worry. So they're banking on the fact that he'll stay durable and he'll continue to grow and get bigger into his frame, all the while keeping all of the athleticism, ball skills, and the things that attracted Washington to him in the first place. So, yes, I did like him more than Deonte Banks. I thought I did a draft prospects one-on-one on Deonte Banks, and I told you I thought he was a second-round pick. He went in the first. So, I thought Forbes was a second-round pick. You know, I thought Forbes was a second-round pick, but I could see Forbes getting pushed up to the back end of the first, just like I could see, Deonte Banks being pushed up. I think I had him as a fringe first, early second type of guy. Both of them were that for me. I had them right in the same range, but I did have Forbes before Banks. Honcho having highlights. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Honcho having highlights writes, I think Emmanuel Forbes is the non-viral version of Travis Hunter. They're both 6'1", 170 ball hawks, and Hunter is expected to be a top pick in 2025. I'm not saying he's a stud. He's not a jag. But he's not a jag. Well, we know he's not a jag. He's not just a guy. The question is he that guy? Is he him? Because that's what you looking to draft in the first round. You're looking to draft him. Is he him? Only time will tell. We'll find out. We hope he's him. We could use a him. I had a super chat here from Alex Bonfield. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Alex Bonfield, writes, as a skinny guy, I'm loving the Forbes pick. You represent for all the skinny dudes. That's what Forbes is doing. Glad to have the representation. But for real, Ron seems okay with it. Is his weight actually a non-issue? It is for some teams. Clearly not for everyone. I read somewhere, I can't remember where, but I read somewhere, and this, take it with a grain of salt, because somebody could have made this up, and when you don't put a name to a quote, it's hard to give it validity. But I read somewhere that a high-ranking official in the NFC said that Emmanuel Forbes was the third corner on his list. He was the third corner in this draft for him. I think a lot of people that and let me go look at my list real quick. And I'll tell you where I had him. He was third on mine as well. So I had him. Let me look. I'll tell you what my list was real quick at corner. Obviously, I had Gonzalez is my number one corner, but I started to, when I made this list, I hadn't done extensive work. I introduced myself to these prospects and I formulated a list as each guy, I watched each guy, I slotted them where I felt they should go. And I didn't come back and alter the list because initially I had JPJ as my number 3 corner in this draft. But the more I watched, the more that I felt like Washington was interested, the more I heard fans of this team. And remember, I told you guys on one of those live streams, like maybe 2-3 weeks ago, I said, I'm going to go back and watch more JPJ because I'm on the fence about him. I went back and watched more and I was like, nah, he ain't it. Not for me. And I moved him down the list. And that's when I elevated Emmanuel Forbes. And so I think Witherspoon was the best corner because it's hard for me to accept a guy that just isn't looking to be physical. And then I still would have had Gonzalez second, regardless. I had him over Forbes. And then I had Forbes third. And then I had JPJ after Forbes. And then I had Deonte Banks is my 5th corner in this draft. So we'll see what ultimately happens. The weight was an issue for some teams, but not for everyone. And my thing is, if it wasn't a problem in college, and it's not like he played in the WAC, he played in the SEC. It doesn't get much more physical than that. You know what I'm saying? And excuse me, I'm not saying he's going to get to 190 pounds. I don't think he's going to get any more than $180. I'd be shocked if he got to 185. Okay. I think the highest he could get to is 180 pounds. I more so think he'll be like 177 or something like that. Yeah, and at the end of the day, if he was able to stay healthy in college at 166, which is what he played at last year, and I'm assuming he was either the same or even lighter in the years previous to that, and he didn't have any issues, until there's an issue, then there's not for me. I understand football is a physical sport, so I get those that say, bro, he got to be bigger than that. I get that. But if you like him enough, clearly they did, then and it's not an issue for you until it's an issue. So yeah, his weight was a non-issue, a real issue for some teams. Is it a non-issue? Until it's an issue, it's a non-issue for me. I can't speak for anybody else. Until it's an issue, it's not. All right. Got a super chat here from Joe Rockhead J. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Sorry about that. Joe Rockhead. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Shout out to my guy, Joe Rockhead, for we twins right now, man, for the thumbnail. Love it. Who writes, I think Bieniemy is going to create an offense that fits our talent, but protects our inexperience. Just need the D to protect leads and cover mistakes. I think there could be a conservative nature to his offense initially, you know, trying to make sure that they protect Sam, but I want to see them cut it loose. You know, it was so frustrating in week 18 last year watching them babysit Sam Howell. Yeah, he made a mistake, a bad one in the red zone. It was a terrible decision, but he's not going to learn unless you let him make those mistakes. There was a lot more good in that game than bad, obviously. But I want to see them, you know, be aggressive, cut him loose, let him throw the football down the field, you know, get it out of his hands quickly. You know, obviously run the football and try to protect him with the run game a bit, but also give him a chance to be dynamic as a passer. So, you know, I want to give the defense more leeway. Like, it's hard to be mad at Jack Del Rio for not being aggressive when you pretty much got to hold the opposition to 17 or 20 points to have a chance to win. That means you can't be super aggressive, because if you're wrong and you miss, or it doesn't hit home and you give up a big touchdown, You're one score away potentially giving up from not being able to win the game because the offense is incapable of scoring 24 points. So, as frustrating as it can be watching Jack keep it essentially vanilla and basic, what do you want him to do when he goes into every game thinking, all right, all we can give up is 20. Anything more, we lose. Because the offense is averaging 18 points a game. What do you want Jack to do? So I'm just hoping that he's allowed to be aggressive by the offense scoring points and putting them in a position where they can try to force a turnover by being aggressive. Push the envelope a bit. We'll see. Got a super chat here from Pit Fight Entertainment. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Pit Fight Entertainment writes, the other day when I said I was worried about Jay Carter slipping, but didn't expect the nightmare that came. But I ain't scared. Let's wreck. Run it. I knew that there was a chance. So I had already said that I said if Anthony Richardson is there, they're going to take Anthony Richardson, they being the Seattle Seahawks. If Richardson is not there, which he wasn't, then he's going to be a Seattle Seahawk, is Jalen Carter. I was confident about that. And then they threw a curveball and took Devon Witherspoon, and I was like, that's a pleasant surprise and change from what's been the Seattle Seahawk way at cornerback. As long as I can remember, it's been long, rangy corners that were physical, right? Going all the way back to Dick Sherman in the early 2010s, right? You had Dick Sherman and Brandon Browner, and then even though Byron Maxwell wasn't particularly tall, he's kind of more of the Devon Witherspoon mold in terms of his size. He was the longer corner for a short guy at 5'11". But it was always these big corners, man. Then you saw what they did last year with Michael Jackson on one side and the freak that they had at corner that was a beast last year as a rookie, Tariq Woolen, right? So yeah, Woolen last year along with Jackson, and those guys are like 6'3", 4, long ass arms, and you're thinking this is what the Seahawks do. And then they draft Devon Witherspoon, and I was like, interesting. Didn't see that coming. All right, well, the Bears gonna take him at 9. And the Bears is like, no, the hell we are not. We got our eyes on something else. They trade out of 9, I think. If I'm not mistaken, they trade back and allow somebody to come up. Let me see. Let me get my facts straight. Did they stay at 9? Because the Bears, I thought they were going to take Peter Skoronski once the Seahawks took Jalen Carter. But then when the Seahawks didn't take Jalen Carter, I was like, can you pass up on Jalen Carter? And I think ultimately, yeah, the Eagles came up from 10 to 9 with the Bears. And then the Bears took Darnell Wright. So I was like, interesting stuff. I didn't think Carter would get to the Eagles because I didn't think the Bears would be willing to pass up on him. Because I thought when they were at number 1, he was one of the players that they were probably considering at number 1. So to still have a shot to get him at 9, I'm not trading back one spot with you, Philadelphia. Kick rocks. That's what I thought was going to happen. But they was like, we got to protect Justin Fields. To hell what you talking about. And I get that. That's the most important thing. If you can't protect Justin Fields, what the hell is all of this other stuff we doing for anyway? Because we could have took Bryce Young. We could have took CJ Stroud. We could have got us a quarterback if we're not going to protect Justin Fields. So I get it. I didn't think he was going to end up in Philadelphia. I didn't want him to end up in Philadelphia. But like you said, to hell with it. Let's wreck shit. What's done is done. All right. All that means is we got to be stout in the middle because they got some dogs, literally some bulldogs. So we just gonna have to be stout in the interior of our offensive line, and we taking steps to do that. So anyway, I digress. That's the last super chat. I've talked your head off for long enough. I appreciate y'all for coming and chopping it up with the kid on this impromptu Saturday night stream. But I felt like with the draft coming to an end and now seeing the 7 selections that Washington made, I wanted to come and kind of take the pulse of how you guys felt about what the team has done. And I feel like I think it's split. I think it's mixed, and that's not a bad thing, I get nervous sometimes when there's this consensus of either it was a really good draft or it was a really bad draft. Kind of get nervous when we're all in agreement. So being that we're kind of split, I think I feel good about that. That means they probably got it right, more likely than not. But anyway, I will have that full breakdown of the Washington Commanders 2023 NFL draft on your desk at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So when you wake up, it'll be there. If you're an early riser, it'll be there at 8 o'clock. So I look forward to chopping it up with you guys on Monday. We'll be back like cook crack for the Louie T Network podcast. We've got a ton to discuss then. Obviously the draft, and I've got a lot of takeaways from the draft, a lot of things that happened. So we're going to discuss all of those things and then some. If you're a Washington fan, I'll be live with Rio on his channel on Tuesday. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll be live for the command post on Thursday night. So, and I'm going to get the Super Friends together here shortly because my guy LB was talking shit in our little chat that we have in our Super Friends chat. And after they traded for DeAndre Swift, he sent me eyeball emojis like, hey, y'all seeing this? And then he sent me and Law a message saying something to the effect of, hey, y'all good over there, man? Just checking on y'all. And I said, hey, I appreciate my response to him was, I appreciate the wellness check. But I said, we was doing y'all boys before we even had a quarterback, and now we do. So we straight over here. But thanks. That was my response to him. So then he had some smart shit to say, and I had some slick shit to say. And I just was like, all right, we're going to chop it up soon enough. So anyway, I digress. I do have one more super chat on the way out from Pit Fight Entertainment. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, if we stay healthy with our new culture, we dogs. Health is paramount. Health is paramount. But not just health is going to get it done. Execution, being coached properly. These are the things that are also going to go a long way in having success. So a lot of unknowns, but I'm excited about them. Anxious, but excited at the same time. So anyway, I digress. You guys go ahead, get out of here, enjoy the rest of your evening, the rest of your weekend, and I will see you tomorrow with a full breakdown of this year's draft class. And you know what it is, man. Post up, take command. If you would please leave the kid a like on the way out. Don't have to if you don't want to, but it'd be greatly appreciated. Anyway, you guys get out of here. Have a good one. God bless and good night.